All right, how we doing, y'all? ¿Cómo estamos? I think yesterday I gave you a little bit more, más naco, cabrones, más, a little bit more grimy, just a little bit, just a little bit. And today we are with starting off the stream with Mana. Now, Mana, for those of you that don't know, you've definitely heard their songs at a quinceañera, at a wedding, and whatnot. They're easily the most popular band in terms of rock en español, almost without question. But I will say this: in certain circles, they have essentially the same stigma that the Eagles had, whether right or wrong. I mean, Desperado, Desperado. Man, such a great song. The Eagles have amazing songs, but within certain like circles, especially of older like rock scenes, the Eagles are considered essentially like a studio band, a boy band where they're not really saying anything significant. They're just singing like rock love anthems or whatnot. Standing in the corner of Winslow, Arizona, I got 7 women on my mind. What is it? 4 that want to own me, 2 that want to sew me, and 1 who says she's a friend of mine. Take it easy, take it easy. Don't let the sound of your own wheels drive you crazy. I like the Eagles. I don't give a fuck. I like the Eagles. I don't care what complaints old people have of them. Give me 1 second. But Mana sometimes gets a lot of that negativity as well. I get it. I understand it. I think they have a couple of solid hits. This one though is absolutely without question their best. And the short version of it is a woman's husband goes off to sea, and she promised him, or they both promise each other. He promises that he'll return. She promises that she'll wait for him, and she decides to post up every day, waiting for his return. Same dress, same everything. Along the bay, on the pier, excuse me. And years go by. The guy dies, obviously out at sea, and she refuses to leave that spot. And the town folks try to, tear her away from the pier. She refuses, and she's just aging because of the wind, the sea, everything. And but she refuses to leave that spot until her lover returns. And it's a very tragic and heartbreaking song. It's a very beautiful song. I think it's definitely their best song, almost without question. Um, so credit where credit is due. Cafe Tacuba is better. I mean, it's not even a comparison though. That's what I'm trying to get at. Mana is like entry level stuff. Cafe Tacuba is Cafe Tacuba. The thing is, like, they're legit musicians. Like, they went to school for that stuff. Like, these guys can compose music at a higher level. If you ever watched the documentary on Morotov, one of the criticisms of Molotov is like, oh, well, they're just a rock band. They don't really try to elevate the music any more than that. They don't try adding any like strings or wind instruments, this and that. Café Tacuba has always essentially done some version of that. Um, very sometimes playing a lot with like experimental type of rock. I'll be honest, some of their tracks for me are very, very hit or miss because it's just a little too much going on. But when man, ojalá que lleva café en el campo, like just certain songs can't be beat, can't be beat. Let me just connect. I totally forgot to set up the power bank here. And then we'll be good to go. Give me 1 second. I knew it looked lonely over here. Oh, well. All right, so we're just gonna focus on this today in hopes of getting through at least most of it. I might skip about an hour of it, because I don't like the, I'm not really into debate, especially online debate, which is just uh, even more performative than, sorry, even more performative than any other type of debate. And I will say this, Chris Kunzler is, I'm sure, like, his intellect, intelligent, just smart as fuck without question. And that's even without putting weight on the horrendous, atrocious, ear bleeding, nails on the chalkboard accent of his that, people have been trained to adore, to glorify, to automatically, like, legitimize whatever's coming out of that or alongside that accent. The European British accent or wherever the fuck he's from is the equivalent of a politician being tall. It's the equivalent of a politician being tall. So even, I'm the opposite. I'm biased against it. Even with that in mind, I think that without question, he is very intelligent. I don't know how he came up. I don't know when he came onto the scene. In fact, let me see here. He's live right now. Let's see. He has 344 people watching. And he has 41,000 subscribers, 125 videos. If we go all the way to his lives to see when he really starts, reacting to Ethan Klein debating Sam Cedar 7 months ago. His videos, 10 months ago, interview with Palestinian historian Abdel Razik Tariki. Oh, sorry, I've seen a little bit of this. The myths of Israeli soldiers. I think I only made it that far because of his accent. I'll be honest with you, probably. So it looks like his whole, at least YouTube presence. I don't know if he's bigger on, I'm assuming maybe TikTok over here. Oh yeah, he's huge over here on TikTok. Now the question is, did he start gaining popularity covering the genocide of Palestinians? That's always my go-to question because a lot of these, European and European descendant people have essentially made a career off of covering the genocide of Palestinians. And I do think that's a little gross. I'm not gonna lie to you. Let's see here. Yeah, see, this is his first one, and yeah.
So by now, I'm sure that all of you have seen this image and you've seen the stir that it has been causing online.
So that appears to be his first video. Let's see something else. It's all publicly available. $183 supporters. He doesn't have, I don't use coffee. I don't know. Buy me a coffee or whatever. Here's why I'm pointing this out. And I'm sure he does great work. I'm sure he's very, very, very intelligent. Here's my concern. You've seen it with Bad Hasbro. And of course, Bad Hasbro was created by Matt Lieb and Daniel Maté, son of Gabor Maté, who is a Zionist who claims to cry for Palestinians. Let's see, Chris. And you see 2 months ago, he was on Bad Hasbro. And look, there's nothing wrong with being invited and going on Bad Hasbro if you actually call them out to their faces about their liberal Zionist positions and the fact that they're normalizing liberal Zionism in the guise of criticizing or combating Zionist propaganda, right? Nothing has made Matt Lieb wealthier. Nothing has made Matt Lieb wealthier than profiting off of the genocide of Palestinians by pretending to combat Zionist propaganda and in reality normalizing liberal Zionist propaganda. You've seen it with his, just his coverage alone, their positions of both Matt Lieb and Daniel Maté, but also their guests that they have on. Some of them are great. Others are liberal Zionist propagandists like Emma Vigeland, who said that the Zionist entity has a right to exist because it does exist. You see it with Daniel Maté's father, Gabriel Maté, who on Piers Morgan said that he doesn't support Palestinians taking back all their land. Not all their land, just the 67 borders. Like shit like that, right? So these are truly, truly vile, disgusting people. There is a special place in hell for Matt Lieb. Unfortunately, I don't believe that it exists. But sometimes you need to hold on to something to make yourself feel better about how these people are profiting off of the death of Palestinians, off of the genocide of Palestinians. When prior to October 7th, where was Bad Hasbro? Prior to October 7th, where was Bad Hasbro? Because these people knew about it. These are not uneducated people. These people have not been ignorant to it. It's the same reason why I hold Hassan Piker to account for collaborating with Ethan Klein and the Klein Zionist family, because he knew that they were Zionists. He knew that Eli Klein was a proud IOF veteran. And Hassan wants to brag about, well, I've been covering Palestine for years. Well, if you've been covering Palestine for years, which he has pretended to care about Palestinians, why then would you turn around and start a political show with a liberal Zionist and refuse to question him on his Zionist ideology, which is a white supremacist, branch? And wait until October 7th until they can't be ignored. Why was it that it was Ethan Klein who ended leftovers and not you? Why is it that Ethan Klein's childhood friend cut him off when Ethan Klein told him he was going to marry an IOF veteran and live in the Zionist entity? Why does some random individual with no platform, with no political influence, have more integrity, is more principled than the largest online so-called leftist political commentator in Hassan Piker? Right? So these are my criticisms. So for Chris Kunzler to come on Bad Hasbro and not call him out for what they're doing, which is liberal Zionist Hasbara, how do you say it? I don't fucking care. Just highlights a lot of how these opportunists move and support each other, normalize each other. It was really, it's not disappointing because I'm sure he's doing real work and isn't like keeping tabs on the position of Matt Lieb and Daniel Maté. But when Mohammed El Kurd, when he went on Bad Hasbro, it was it was a bummer. It was a definite bummer. And it only makes me hate these fucking people more. It only makes me hate Matt Lieb more that he has a space where, because of associations and because of this, a quick glance, he's able to have people that are legitimately anti-Zionist. And see, here it was 6 months ago. And uses, and I only made it halfway through because it was just so fucking it was just so fucking honestly vile and disgusting how these insidious liberal Zionists invade spaces and count on people not being able to have the time to really dive into their positions. And that's the reason why sometimes when I feel that I'm being, I don't know, like that I'm wasting my time, if I'm being honest, sometimes it feels like I'm wasting my time and I should be using, these 3-4 hours when we stream, um organizing, being more productive. And then I see things like this and I'm like, well, nobody is calling Bad Hasbara out from the left. Nobody is documenting how Matt Lieb is a liberal Zionist, how Daniel Matte is a liberal Zionist, how their guests have frequently been liberal Zionists. Nobody's documenting that. So sometimes, and maybe it's just an excuse to continue doing this. I'm like, well, if I do what I need to do, if I organize my time properly, and I make a video on Matt Lieb and Bad Hasbara, then maybe Muhammad Al-Kurd will see it. Maybe someone that is actually anti-Zionist and has been invited on will see it and either cancel their appearance or be like, you know what, let me bring this up in conversation with them. Silver linings, I don't know. But I appreciate y'all being here. This is literally what the stream's going to be today. The conversation was 4 hours. We'll cover about 3 hours of it. So that means that we're going to do about 4 hours again. Let's get to it, y'all. I appreciate y'all being here. If you haven't already, please hit the like button. Hit the notification bell if you want to know when I go live. And super chats, super stickers are turned on. And if you want to support this little project, the Patreon is linked in the description below. You get access to the Discord. Yesterday, we were celebrating Autumn Leaves. I guess being booted out of the majority report once again. I guess it's happened in the past. Fuck them, bro. I'm petty and I celebrate and dance on the graves of these just pathetic individuals. Autumn Leaves was a mod at the majority report and at the Vanguard. And we seen yesterday the Vanguard, Zach and Gavin, making excuses for their Grand Wizard, Kyle Kalinske. He's got 3 Ks in his name for a fucking reason. Kyle KKK Kalinske making excuses of why his 4chan, racist Indian, like racist depiction of an Indian man, why it wasn't necessarily racist to begin with, right? Also excusing, homophobic jokes, just pathetic individuals through and through. Where are we at? Where are we starting this? I think at the 18-second mark would be solid to start this. Yeah, let's do the 18-second mark.
I think that's a good position to start from.
Okay, broadly speaking, there are 2 national groups in that region. Whether one side likes it or not, they're both there. They're not going anywhere unless you want to have a brutal ethnic cleansing campaign of one group or the other. I don't want that. I hope most people don't want that. And they definitely seem to have no intention of wanting to share a country together. So I think the way that we've dealt with national conflicts in the past, or the way that borders have typically worked, is that it just seems to make the most sense to have the Palestinians in their state and the Israelis in theirs. And, I'm a multiculturalist. I think sectarianism is insane. It's a very stupid thing to be watching from a distance. But if you want to solve that, I think it would make much more sense for them to be living in peace and security in their 2 different regions. And then if they want to engage in trade with each other and reconciliation and whatever else, then hopefully that border would become less and less meaningful. But yeah, if you want them to have a state now in Palestine, then it's going to be 2 states, not 1.
And how do you think that is reached? Like with the current Israeli government, how do you think that that's plausible? And in fact, not just
this whole multiculturalism, a lot of liberals use that as an excuse, much like pink washing, right? Fanon talks about it in A Dying Colonialism. And it's always chilling, right? To see how the same strategies are used. The whole rinse and repeat. But sometimes you got to change it, just change it up a tiny bit, and you see that with the embrace of multiculturalism, similar to how the U.S. in creating their settler colonial myth eventually had to adopt the idea of a melting pot. And we seen how Sam Cedar, a anti-Zionist, was still pushing that narrative, that myth, that settler colonial myth, on the Jubilee episode he had when he was, debating a white supremacist woman. And so you see how liberals will use multiculturalism, melting pot, all this bullshit to excuse settler colonialism. Oh, we're all coming here. What's wrong with everyone just coming through, right? And it's like, well, first of all, who's everyone? What's their intent? What's going on? Like, what's the purpose of them, arriving here? And we'll see later on in the debate where, this whole conversation about immigration comes along. And it's like, well, wait. Now you're, trying to paint me or making me look like I'm pro borders, this and that. I am pro borders when we're talking about invading. Not, oh, white genocide invading. The black and brown hordes are coming after our children. Not that shit. Europeans arriving with the intent and purpose of settling and colonizing the land is not immigration. It's an invasion. And like always, and we've seen this, narrative be repeated, every accusation is a confession or what have you. That's nothing new. That's nothing new. What has always been the narrative? Oh, since day one, black men will rape white women. What have white men have been doing since day one? So you see these narratives. Oh, these savages are sacrificing people. They're barbaric, this and that. And you look at Europe and you see all the instruments of torture, death, and destruction. Oh, but that's fine because that was done under the name of Christ, our Lord and Savior. The church, allowed certain things to occur. They approved it. All these excuses.
Just the current Israeli government, like speaking about the alternatives, because in my understanding, the largest the largest outcome that wouldn't be good is Naftali Bennett, I think, and he doesn't support a two-state. So how do we get from where we are now to a two-state solution?
I think we have to look at how we've gotten closer to it in the past. I think the fact is that despite what a lot of embedded Zionist propagandists will say, for the last 100 years, Israelis have maybe for less than 10 of those been favoring a two-state solution or voted in favor of one. For the rest of the time, they voted for governments that don't want one.
In which period, sorry? Did they vote for one that did?
They voted in Barak, who promised that he wanted to solve the conflict with the Palestinians, and they voted in Olmert as well.
Okay. Yeah,
we can go into details if you want, but just broadly speaking, they've been more humoring of it in the past than they were now, and definitely before the 90s, they were not humoring it at all.
See, I would kind of hold the
Chi wee wee. Sounds local way. A new plastic idea. No, let's not do that. Unless we know somebody does. Once you do a quick Google search, let's not do that because he does look like a creep. He does look like a weirdo. I'm not gonna say he doesn't. He's a stand-up comedian, so there's that. Literally, things are stacking up against him as I'm talking. But he's been married to Francesca Fiorentini for quite a while, and he has a child with her. Not that that would rule anything out, but let's not engage in that unless we know, unless there's something already out there, because he's bad enough being a liberal Zionist propagandist and misleading people to where we don't have to reach for anything else. But I understand why, at a glance, somebody might almost automatically assume that he is a creep. Unfortunately, he has the phenotype.
opinion that I'm not sure really they ever humoured it. I think particularly the best example would be the Oslo Accords, because for me, right, I can't really see any other example where Palestinians have been as close, that the PLO, 100% confirmed their commitment to recognise Israel's right to exist, their desire for there to be a two-state solution, and it just didn't go anywhere. Well, it did go somewhere, which was the further Bantustanization of Palestinian territories and, the strengthening or solidification of occupation.
Do you want me to address that specifically, or do you want me to go back to what I was saying about?
Yeah. I'd like to hear a way in which that wasn't the case.
In which what part? So you're thinking that from Oslo onto the 2000s, the Israelis only Bantustanized further, and were not ever humoring there being a state in the West Bank and Gaza.
I think so, yeah.
No, I'm not entirely convinced of that. I think there's an argument to be made that Camp David wasn't good enough. But given how the PLO and Arafat responded to the Clinton parameters, I think it seems pretty likely that the Israelis were more willing to put something on the table than the Palestinians were. I still, to this day, do not know what the Palestinian offer of a two-state solution looks like concretely. I know they said yes to frameworks, but as far as a final offer, as in this is exactly what we want for borders, refugees, Jerusalem, security, I've not seen anything.
I think the base level is, right, accepting international law, surely. Our government's right, because this is sort of one of the problems that I have predominantly with the two-state solution, right? Our governments all say that they want the two-state solution. They declare that Israel's occupation is illegal, that settlements of Palestinian land is illegal, but then they do nothing to pressure Israel in these negotiations. Like at Camp David, in my understanding, there was a point at which Arafat was like, you are literally just repeating Israeli talking points. These are not even America's own talking points.
I'm going to try not to be petty. I'm going to try my best and not to be petty throughout this. But this is too funny. From my understanding,
Palestinian land is illegal, but then they do nothing to pressure Israel in these negotiations. Like at Camp David, in my understanding.
I wear glasses. Y'all see me with glasses on every stream. Call me a hypocrite. When do I do this? When do I do? I think that it's developed when they're young because they think it looks smart or cool. And then it makes them look intelligent. And I think they don't think that now. I think they grow out of it. But, the habit stays, the physical, like tick, if you will, stays. It's just the lineup between doing that and from my understanding, it's just, man, these fucking dweebs, bro. Like, just be fucking normal. Be normal. Look at this.
Palestinian land is illegal, but then they do nothing to pressure Israel in these negotiations. Like at Camp David, in my understanding.
I know I'm the problem. I understand that. I'm gonna try my best and not to focus on dumb shit like that moving forward so we get through it all. But just someone like me, when I see that, I'm just like, this was gonna be insufferable. But all right.
There was a point at which Arafat was like, you are literally just repeating Israeli talking points. These are not even America's own talking points. And that rather than acting as like an honest broker, they acted fully as like a dishonest broker in favor of Israel. And I think that at this point, it's like really hard to see how when you allegedly have these Israeli governments that are moderate and you have this Palestinian position of, okay, we'll accept basic international law. And also, in my understanding, right, I think there's a couple of different alleged proposals on the right of return. And there's one that was like 800,000 Palestinians being allowed to return and Israel could have control over that happening. But I think that getting to these points is interesting because the main thing that hasn't stopped with any of these governments is settlements. Like, how do we get to a point of having a two-state solution when Israel is actively undermining that through every negotiation? Like Israel, in each one of these negotiations, settlement didn't stop. And settlement has always been the key obstacle to peace because it's illegal under international law. And it is effectively operating not just as a random thing that happens. It is a thing that is continually happening directly to undermine the emergence of a Palestinian state. So I find it hard to look at any negotiation and not see that as the most important thing.
Okay, so first of all, just because there's a few things going on once there, you mentioned accept international law. When you say that they need to establish a two-state solution based on international law, what specifically do you mean?
I think.
And again, that's the issue. And Norm Finkelstein was starting a hissy fit about this when speaking to Mehdi Hassan, where he's like, if you're going to couch your whole argument on international law, then you have to recognize the right of the Zionist entity to exist because it's internationally recognized as a legitimate state. Which is why I think it's a fucking waste of time to to root your position on the bullshit concept of international law.
Conflict.
This is the reason why Norm Finkelstein hates Mehdi Hassan. It's not because Mehdi Hassan's a fucking opportunist. It's not because he's a fucking sellout. It's because let's see here.
Said Israel's occupation is cost-free is the idea of a boycott going to have for talking, and a lot of Palestinian grassroots is one of the issues on which Palestinian public opinion is now switching, and a lot of Palestinian grassroots is coming behind, is the idea of a boycott, divestment and sanctions movement, the BDS movement, of a kind of South African anti-apartheid style movement to isolate Israel. You said Israel's occupation is cost-free, to impose a cost on Israel. Is that something you support?
Totally.
Totally. But the actual like movement, the actual organizers, those people that are setting the parameters and devoting their time and efforts to best use boycott, divestment, and sanctions against the Zionist entity, Norm Finkelstein opposes them. How fucking convenient. Oh, I like the idea of it. Sure, it's great. But the actual, material, the practice of it, Norm Finkelstein conveniently doesn't fuck with it. It's no different than Bernie Sanders being like, well, if people choose, I'm not against it. But he himself does not support it because they both understand that is one tool to end the Zionist entity. And at the end of the day, Norm Finkelstein said it himself when he was banned from entering the Zionist project. Norm Finkelstein said, quote, "I am not an enemy of Israel."
It was for BDS before BDS existed. Any sane person would be for it.
And yet a couple of years ago in an interview, you've now infamously referred to BDS as a cult. You said the people who've joined BDS are part of a cult and they're responsible for a potentially historically criminal mistake.
Yeah, because there's a difference between a tactic and a goal. The tactic is absolutely legitimate, and as I said, I've always supported the tactic. The problem is the goal.
Ending Israel's occupation and dismantling the wall, recognizing the rights of Palestinian citizens in Israel, and respecting and promoting the rights of Palestinian refugees. Which of those three goals do you object to?
BDS put out its call in July 2005 to coincide with the first anniversary of the ICJ advisory opinion on the wall. And the very first statement of the BDS document says, we support international law. And they said the first right under international law is the right of peoples to self-determination. And from that right of self-determination, they then derive three other rights. I say, of course, I agree with all of that. But Israel is also a state under international law. Israel still also has the right to self-determination and stated under international law. And then you have two options. One option is you have to recognize the reciprocal rights of Israel under international law because you say you're anchored in international law. Or, of course, you have the right to say, to hell with international law. I think it's all nonsense. I think it's all made by rich people against poor people.
But three goals, as you mentioned.
I'm for international law only when it concerns my rights. It's like saying I have the right to walk at the green, but I'm agnostic on the red. If you have a right to walk at the green, it's because you have an obligation to stop at the red.
Hold on, Norman, that would only
you
count
can't claim rights
if they
just
said
for
they
yourself.
want to destroy Israel militarily. Then you could say that's violating Israel. I'm not sure how demanding three rights which you agree with.
Mehdi, is Israel a state under international law?
It's recognized by international law, yes.
Fine,
and where did the BDS not recognize Israel?
Ask them.
I have asked them.
Wait.
I have asked them.
Do you think it's an accident that Israel is not mentioned?
So understand that Norm Finkelstein is a Zionist. He is. He's just a hypercritical liberal Zionist. Understand that aspect of it. Norm Finkelstein is a Zionist. He just happens to be a hypercritical liberal Zionist. That does not mean that he is not a Zionist, though. And that's why he's enraged. That's why he's angered. That's why he's upset. That's why he feels, disrespected. That the BDS movement, the organization, does not recognize the Zionist entity. That is not bowing before it and including it. And I think it's funny to me because Zionists are always weaponizing international law, the rules-based order, all that shit, always weaponizing it to their benefit. But God forbid Palestinians do the same. Because you'll have these hypercritical liberal Zionists like Norm Finkelstein, like Sam Cedar, come out and wag their finger. Sam Cedar was literally calling for the death of the entire leadership of the Palestinian resistance forces, Hamas. Calling for them. What would it mean to the Palestinian people if the entire leadership of Hamas, the ones fighting the Zionist occupier, were to, according to Sam Cedar's wishes, to be eliminated? The entirety of it. How would they defend themselves properly? It would take some time to reorganize. I'm not saying they wouldn't, but within that time to reorganize, to resettle themselves, reorient themselves, the Zionist entity would have an opportunity to potentially land a crippling blow to the resistance movement, which is what Sam Cedar, Norm Finkelstein, these liberal Zionists, no matter how critical they are, ultimately what they want. To force Palestinians to capitulate. Look how upset he looks. How dare the BDS movement not recognize the Zionist entity? How dare they?
Do you think it was an oversight? We forgot about Israel?
Norman.
Is this serious?
Really, Norman? They forgot about
Christ's
Israel.
sake.
They forgot about Israel. Omar Barghouti, the founder of BDS,
yes.
has pointed out that the majority of people on the boycott committee are two-staters.
That's absolutely correct.
Which bit of international law?
But it's not enough. But it's never fucking enough for these people. They are not happy until they're licking Zionist boots.
Do they not recognize?
That Israel is a state under international law.
Can you show me a statement where they say Israel isn't a state under international law?
Show me a statement where they say it.
I do show
They
you a
say,
statement.
have you ever
So fucking childish.
asked the BDS person where they stand on Israel?
Yes.
And what do they say? We take no position.
Salma, you're not following international law by supporting this BDS campaign.
The three calls of BDS are completely in line with international law, and the question of how you end up resolving the conflict, whether you have one state or two states, whether Israel is there still as a state or not, is actually a political question that international law is silent on.
And just briefly, next to her is Chef Halper, the author of Decolonizing Palestine. What is this? Decolonizing Israel, Liberating Palestine. Where he was supposed to co-author this with a Palestinian individual who ended up bowing out of the project. And of course, Chef Halper, like a good colonizer, continued the project. This is a book. This is an individual the individual that was glorified by our great white savior saint, Michael Brooks, a book that is always being pushed and peddled by Matt Leck, the producer of the Majority Report. Instead of actually amplifying Palestinian voices, he chooses to amplify a colonizer who knew he was participating in colonization. He admitted it almost a decade ago on the Michael Brooks show, saying he did not have rose-tinted glasses when he went to go settle, to go colonize and occupy the Zionist, the Palestinian land. The fuck?
Probably the 6-day war borders, right? Is that 242 or 338?
It's both, really.
Okay, yeah.
But does 242 say the exact 67 borders?
I don't know.
It basically says the opposite. It says so if you look at the background to how the Resolution 242 came about, Lord Caradon, I think specifically, was the main person who spoke about this, is that if you look at the exact wording of 242, it doesn't say first of all, it has the main principle. It's inadmissible to acquire territory through conquest. But then the second part is they say to withdraw from territories, a very strangely worded sentence. They don't say the territories or all the territories. They just say from territories occupied since the Six-Day War. And the French translation, some people mistake it, but the way that's worded says effectively the same thing. So, and the reason they did that was because the 67 borders, really the 49 border, is not really a border at all. It's an armistice line. And it was definitely put in to be ambiguous because they wanted to anticipate that a border based on a random armistice line from just where the Arab and Jewish soldiers were in 49 doesn't really make sense. So it would be open to negotiation and land swapping and things like that. That's why it's there. 242 doesn't say to just go exactly down to the letter. And then the third part it says is that it says that it needs to be on the grounds of mutual security and recognition, as in it needs to be compatible with each side being assured that the other won't use that state to attack the other.
I just find it interesting, like, to kind of quibble with the logic of it there when it says initially that it is inadmissible to conquer territory or to seize and annex territory through conquest.
Well, that's why when it comes to law, like laws are usually interpreted by the professionals and by the people who are involved in putting it down. Like they say it's inadmissible, but then they will also say that they say territories are not the territories, and they did that very, very intentionally. They did that intentionally because they were anticipating that whatever a Palestinian state is, it might be a little bit different to the 6-7 borders. It could even theoretically be bigger. Obviously, it's not been offered to be bigger, but that's why it's there.
So, and again, another issue with relying or placing your whole argument on international law. You're essentially relying on your oppressors to dictate what you are allowed and not allowed to do. Which is, you already lost like half the battle then and there. Again, Fanon talks about how the way decolonial movements, armed resistance, has to abide by laws, international laws, that the colonizer never does. Never does. And how this puts the indigenous forces at a disadvantage. But nevertheless, they need to do so in order to avoid adding fuel to the fire of the propaganda that the colonizers uses against them, painting them as barbaric for simply defending their homes. That being said, I'm not judging or criticizing or wagging my finger at how Palestinian forces on the ground are deciding to move, right? When you look at the Zapatista, Eslan, and they have the Mexican flag with them. A lot of Chicanos, read that, interpret that as like, oh yeah, they still identify as Mexican, this and that. And for me, it's kind of funny because I'm like, I've always seen that as an intelligent PR move. Because how is it that they consider themselves Mexicans when they're saying, we don't want to be part of you? We want to be independent. We are our own people. We want to run shit our own way. Right? They're not asking for reform. They're asking for independence. For those of you that haven't seen, I'll upload it really briefly. Let's see. And there's a dope photo that I'm thinking about. And they're marching down and got the flags. And again, this isn't me trying to speak over them or not. Like, if their position is different, that's totally valid. I'm telling you how I've always seen it, always interpreted. No, I'm not gonna find it. There's a short video. That is so random. Absolute Batman. All right. Well, we got to get back to it. Actually, that's gonna bother me. Is it here?
London Jundal has brought him into close. Batistas have become known internationally for their unique system of indigenous autonomy in the interior of Chiapas. When the smoke cleared and an unsteady truce was called, 145 men and women lay dead, most of them rebels. Losing to Andrés Manuel López Obrador, whom the EZLN has since extensively criticized. Despite her loss of the presidential bid, the EZLN's decision to explicitly endorse Marichoy's run marked a shift in the group's willingness to engage in national politics on the.
All right, let's get back to it. My apologies, couldn't find it.
That's
But
what's there.
in order for there to be like a meaningful negotiation, right? In Oslo, Palestinians conceded 78% of historic Palestine on the basis of what they wanted, and 22% throughout the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip. That feels like a far bigger concession than anything that Israel was willing to offer. And just being to abide by that and to take it at its interpretation of, okay, it's wrong to conquer territories, and it's clear that at this point there probably is a
my apologies.
Palestinian group who will and have the capacity to accept a two-state solution. It feels really difficult for me to see that as like, you know, oh, it's just down to the interpretation of international law. It seems that Israel wasn't interested in giving Palestinians a state.
Well, it does seem to be back down to the borders in a way, because if you look at the details of how they negotiated in Camp David, Arafat didn't seem to care all that much about 1 or 2% of the West Bank, or even 5 or 6%. He was actually quite happy to leave that up to Bill Clinton. The sticking points of Camp David and Taba were not 1 or 2, 3, 4% of borders. The sticking points were Jerusalem and the right of return. That's where they just couldn't seem to get any. And you said 800,000 refugees. To my understanding, I don't think Arafat ever, or Abbas, ever said, this is the refugee settlement we will accept. That they've never said that.
Yeah, I heard Finkelstein say that, so when he was debating Ben-Ami ages ago. But I'm going to be frank, I've never really been that interested in these two negotiations. They've never been the key points of what I've studied. But I think even then, at Camp David, right, how could Arafat have gone back to his people and said, look, I've not got sovereignty over the Al-Aqsa Mosque. It's a very important thing for Muslims. Like, you must recognize that surely. Like, the Al-Aqsa Mosque matters a lot. It's the third holiest site in Islam. I'm sure you know all of this.
Yeah, of course, but I would, go on, sorry.
But Arafat was sort of expected to just go back to his people and be like, yeah, sorry, I haven't got that. Because if you look at what Arafat said to Madeleine Albright and
Everything is on the table, or it's expected to be on the table for the colonized, for the oppressed, for the subjugated. They have to be willing to compromise and sacrifice and retreat and surrender everything that is sacred and valuable to them in order to please, in order to concede, in order to fulfill the dreams and desires of the colonizer. It is not enough to say, hey, all right, the land you already stole, keep it. Let us keep our holy site. It's insufficient. It's insufficient. It's not enough. Especially when the Zionist entity, the Zionist project, is rooted on the myth that these Europeans have some type of ancestral connection to that land, when it's strictly the only connection is their religion. No one at any point believed that the European invaders during the Crusades trying to colonize Jerusalem, that they were, because they were Christians, that they were indigenous to the land at some point or another, meaning they still were indigenous when they were invading. It is a tool, it is a weapon, indigeneity, by the Zionist European colonizers. And that's why they need that holy site.
Clinton, before Camp David was called, he said, look, we can't actually call this because the Israelis are not ready to negotiate on the positions that we want. Please don't call it. It is not a position and a good time to call this. And then Clinton calls it. And the sticking point of Jerusalem is not really that surprising, right? Like that it's, you know, Palestine's, like it's such a center of Palestine, they want it as the capital, and kind of getting rid of that is impossible for Arafat. Like no country can really give up their, you know, their capital city where the most important center of life is for so many people.
Well, then why did he? I agree. Why did he say no to Ben-Ami's offer in Taba then? Ben-Ami offered the idea of vertical sovereignty, as in the Israelis would have sovereignty over the wall and the holiest Jewish areas, like surrounding the compound, but then the top of it, like because they do this in maritime law sometimes with vertical sovereignty. But then when they said that Al-Aqsa would have gone sovereign to the Palestinian state, so even when Ben-Ami said that, when he was offered vertical sovereignty, meaning that the compound and the Dome of the Rock goes to the Palestinians, Arafat still said no. And the reason he said no was that because was saying yes to that would entail acknowledging that the Jewish temple existed underneath Al-Aqsa. And he said no to that. That has always been an issue with the Palestinian side, is that they've never even accepted that the Western Wall or the temple is even there, that it's valid, right?
In my understanding, there's also a threat to accepting that, right? Like, it's now reached a point where it is openly talked about by Israeli government figures of demolishing the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and that came specifically at a time when Netanyahu opened the tunnel under Al-Aqsa, which threatens its structural integrity, in my understanding. And so I can kind of see why Arafat might have been like, actually, I really don't want that. I don't want a recognition of the temple underneath because it is a direct threat to the Al-Aqsa Mosque. But also, in my understanding, Arafat didn't walk away. He asked, right, for like specifics. He asked for maps and all of these things at Taba, and then it was more Sharon who torpedoed it, right?
One thing at a time. So it's weird that he would say no, considering that it's still a threat to have vertical sovereignty because of excavation. Obviously, like fuck Netanyahu and Likud, right? But the problem is that excavation was actually part of the deal as well. Part of the Clinton parameters was that excavation would have to be agreed by both sides if they were ever going to do it. I mean, Palestinian leaders since Al-Husseini since the 1800s, have been saying that Zionists want to come and demolish Al-Aqsa. They haven't done it yet, and it would be much harder for them to do it in a peace process. No, that's not why Arafat said no to it. Arafat said no to that because he doesn't believe that the Jewish temple exists there.
Okay. I mean, in my understanding, I've heard some people say that there's no actual archaeological evidence being found of it.
Which people say that?
I heard a PhD student at Exeter say it.
Interesting. I'm pretty sure it's beyond dispute, but okay.
Frankly, I'll be frank with you at that part. I don't actually fully know as to whether that's true. He said that. But what I will say...
Look, it's going to come off like I'm criticizing Chris. I always want to make sure I get his name right, his last name. Kunzler. Because one, I think this is fucking stupid. There is no reason to be debating LonerBox on this. Especially not in this setup. This is solely being done to garner views, more subscribers, more paying, members. That's the only reason this is being done. On both sides, to be honest. So if it comes off that way, it's because at least LonerBox is honest about his commitment for the Zionist project to continue existing no matter what, in whatever shape and form. He's also a liberal Zionist. There's different variations of liberal Zionists. But him and Sam Cedar both agree that the Zionist project should exist in one form or another. How that form takes place, shape, how the structure is made is different. But nonetheless, its existence will continue. Let me see what this was on about. Go over it. He interrupts, and then he's still like, is fucking taking his like sweet time to like get back here. He's like strutting his shit. And then the neighbor's dog's gonna keep barking for another half hour, which is wonderful. I should probably close the door. Okay. All right. Oh yeah. So Chris Kunzler, like, why even bring this up? Why is this even worth debating, right? To say, well, I heard this PhD student once said that he hasn't found any information. Like, if you are going to debate, in what world they're saying, well, I heard a PhD student say that, that's not true. In what world does that work? In what world does that like win you the argument or gain you any legitimacy or, hey, please someone explain it to me. How referencing a PhD student solidifies your position. It doesn't. And so what I'm trying to get at is that if you're going to participate in this fucking clown show when it's not necessary, and look, you could criticize me for going on Jubilee and, debating that Comprador. I've already explained myself. No one was going to approach him the way that I was going to approach him, because I wasn't going to approach him with a PhD student once said this. I wasn't going to approach him with, didn't this happen and that happen? Like my position and my style was not that. It isn't that. It was who put your parents in concentration camps and refugee camps? Who exterminated 33 of your family members? Right? That's what I was there to do. That's what I was there to do. This is simply a collaboration to uplift each other. They are working together. They're in tandem. They're both benefiting from this conversation. It is accomplishing nothing. It is changing no minds. It is done to garner more support from their fan base. It is done so that their fucking fan base can root for them harder, can type away harder. That's why this is being done. I don't care how intelligent, I don't care how well informed Chris Kunzler is. The fact that he's proactively participating in shit like this is the second time he debates LonerBox, tells me everything I need to know about him and his integrity. There is no reason to do this whatsoever, other than financial gain, other than, clout, other than increasing like the devotion your fans have, because you taught him, you got him. That's all it's being done for. And I would appreciate, in fact, I might even oddly respect if he came out and was like, no, I'm doing this for me and mine. I'm good at this. People are supporting me. This is why I'm doing this. I'm in no way trying to benefit the Palestinian people or their cause. It is just simply the conversation that will garner me the most support, the most financial well-being. If he did that, I would oddly respect it. Because I'm like, all right, cool. You're being upfront about what it is, and those people that are supporting you aren't being misled. This isn't false advertisement. You're being honest about what you're on about. Have I ever spoken to LonerBox? But we're doing the same thing? You think I would waste my time talking to LonerBox? For what purpose? What would that gain me? We had Ogre Boy who was trying to bait me into wanting to debate him. Now, Ogre Boy doesn't have any value, but the people that tune in to watch him are like devoted Hassan Piker cultists. And if you're a Hassan Piker fan, then you're going to be associated with the serfs, the leftist mafia, the majority part. All that shit is going to bleed into each other. So anywho, yeah, I don't know what you fools are talking about then. Let's just keep it going.
Specifically about this is, I understand that during a peace negotiation that may be unthinkable, but let's be real, like, Netanyahu and the right were quite likely to come back, and they did come back, did Sharon torpedo the negotiations, right? Because when does Taba end?
Taba ends when with Sharon and also Clinton leaving office as well. But everyone knew this would happen. So that's why it was very imperative to get it done quickly, which is why the delayed response to the Clinton parameters was an issue. And also the endless list of reservations from the PLO was an issue as well. Yeah, I'm not going to support Sharon either. But the problem is, again, is that this opportunity that's why there was so much pressure, more international pressure on any leader to accept a peace deal ever, really, than there was on Arafat to accept Camp David or to counteroffer it. But they didn't. And as far as map clarification, that's to do with Abbas, not to do with Arafat.
Okay, well, I think also another interesting point about all of this is that these negotiations had to have very specific dynamics, because in my understanding, the Oslo Accords are about 300 pages long. They are filled with like very complex legal jargon. And that's part of the reason that, you know, they ended up achieving nothing. They kicked down the road the can of refugees' right of return, which, like, Palestinians deserve the right to return, right? Like, they do deserve the right to return. And I'm sorry, I'm unconcerned by the demographics of Israel. Israel is continually importing huge amounts of, like, Jewish people, and sometimes not even Jewish people, you know, in the case of the huge amounts of Soviets, like ex-Soviet Jewish people who are allowed to bring their spouses over and such. There's about 1 million in the 1990s. And so for me, I can't ever really conceptualize why the Palestinians demanding the right of return is such like a ridiculous or an outrageous thing to keep that as a focus. And especially, I think like Arafat also was particularly interested in Lebanon.
I don't know if this is a tactic to try and to normalize something that would essentially be the end of the Zionist project. The unconditional, complete right of return for Palestinians like they deserve would be the end of the Zionist project, because they would not be able to hold a numerical majority. Right? And that is the objective of every settler colonial project, is to obtain the numerical majority and then granting civil rights to the indigenous population. You see it here, you see some form of sovereignty, a sovereign, I was going to say sovereignty, but that's not even the word. Sovereignty, excuse me. Still with a paternal angle to it. Still with a paternal angle to it.
Palestinians who resided in Lebanon because of what the Lebanese people had given to him and the role he'd played in their society.
Yeah, I think it might be in the Clinton parameters or in the Israeli response to the Clinton parameters, but I think either one of those sides agreed that Lebanese refugees would have priority because of how they're treated in Lebanon. Makes sense. Okay, but this brings us to a much more broad issue. You acknowledge that if full right of return happens, there's no more Israel. There's just two Palestinian states.
I think that ultimately that's right. But the reason that I feel that way is because I would rather invest in like the impossible. Because for me, frankly, the two-state solution is impossible. And the reason I say this, right, is because I think the two-state solution maybe could have happened at some point if there had been major pressure put on Israel. But no one was really willing to do it. Like Carter knew that the settlements were the major issue. Begin just went and increased.
Yeah, got some. I was gonna let you continue just yapping, but this is too cringe right here, bro. Just men taking ownership claim over the earth itself, above and below. Oh my gosh, bro. Get the fuck out of here, bro. Be fucking creative, dog. God damn. You could spew your annoying like positions. I don't care about that. But if you're gonna try to be like fucking like a badass, like, oh, I'm gonna write a fucking dope quote. Fuck out of here. Go wear your fedora somewhere else, bro.
Increased the number of settlements. Rabin increased the number of settlements. Everyone has increased the number of settlements. And the international community does nothing about it. I mean, I think it's best described as kind of like winking at the settlers. They're like, oh, no, you can't do this settlement thing, Israel. But here's unlimited money. Even when there was frozen loan guarantees, I think, was that in the... Yeah, it was to Shamir's government. Yeah, and it was linked to the settlement issue. But then they kind of just... didn't care. And that's why I'm so like so much more in favor of, say, a one-state solution rather than a two-state, because like I appreciate and understand that Arafat is not perfect. I don't think he should have signed the Oslo Accords in the first place. I think it was a terrible idea. I think in like some people's readings of it, particularly Seth Anziska, he says the Washington Accords, the Washington negotiations,
It's funny because when I was critical of Arafat, when debating Emma Vigeland, Sam Cedar, and Matt Leck, the whole Majority Report crew, it like broke Emma Vigeland's brain, right? Because Sam Cedar was glad that Arafat was dead, as well as Ariel Sharon. He's like, yeah, I hope they're burning in hell, whatever. And I was like, yo, like, why would you equate the colonizer with the colonized, even though the honest truth is that Arafat was a fucking sellout. He betrayed, just like Nelson Mandela. He betrayed the decolonial project, the decolonial movement. And so, with that in mind, I can still be like, yo, do not equate the colonizer with the colonized. don't celebrate their deaths as if somehow they're equal, but also recognize that the reason why, we dislike Arafat is because he was a collaborator. Does the PA exist in the way that we know it today without Arafat? I don't think so. But I could be wrong. But somehow holding both of those positions was too much for Emma Vigeland to compute.
Madrid summit were actually looking more likely to get peace because the Palestinians were very clear on what their red lines were, whereas Arafat didn't give any of those red lines. But sorry, I kind of made a multitude of points there, but I think that the thing I'm saying about one state is I would rather invest in the impossible, and I would rather have the hope that there could be a better Middle East. I would rather hope that the Middle East doesn't have to always be dominated by these sectarian nation states and that human beings can live in peace and equality.
We're going to play that part back. Keep in mind, you're going to have to jot this one down. Jot this one down.
Because the Palestinians were very clear on what their red lines were, whereas Arafat didn't give any of those red lines. But sorry, I kind of made a multitude of points there, but I think that the thing I'm saying about one state is I would rather invest in the impossible,
I would rather invest in the impossible, Keep that one in mind. Keep that one in mind, please. Jot that one down. In fact, I'll jot it down with you. At 34:42. I'd rather invest in the impossible. All right. If you follow me on Twitter, you already know what I'm going to be referencing in regards to this later. Spoiler alert. Because we're going to see peak fucking settler realism from Chris Kunzler later on.
And I would rather have the hope that there could be a better Middle East. I would rather hope that the Middle East doesn't have to always be dominated by these sectarian nation states and that human beings can live in peace and equality.
And white people in there. Well, peace and equality. Can't we all just get along?
Yeah, so if you're talking about impossibility, are we saying impossible? I know that impossible just means it's going to be an oxymoron, but are we talking about like a spectrum of impossibility? Like, do you think the two-state and one-state solution are equally impossible, or one's more possible, or like?
I think in the current world order, the changes that are required for there to be a two-state solution would probably just end up being more likely to move towards a one-state solution.
Interesting. Okay. Maybe a broad take about sectarian stuff. So
you know what? I think he would, if I'm being charitable, maybe he's correct, but it would be a one state. It would be a one state under a Zionist control. Very much what Emma Vigeland and Sam Cedar call for. A one democratic Zionist state. Or I guess you call it Israel-Palestine, like Emma Vigeland said. I'm just wondering whether we're going to skip a little bit here. Mainly because I don't care. Mainly because I do not care what LonerBox has to say for the most part. That's the difference between me and Chris. No, I think my only other timestamp is like 2 hours ahead of this. So we're going to have to like tread lightly or quickly through some of this part here. To be honest, the first time I saw this, I was watching it on LonerBox's channel because I'd rather support him. No, because he has timestamps on his. And I was like, it's just going to be easier to navigate. But same thing, I didn't really find this conversation interesting until about the 3-hour mark. But we're just getting started, and I don't want to skip something that might be important to y'all or informative. To me, I've seen too many of these fucking debates. Too many to fucking admit because it's embarrassing. But we'll keep pushing.
Obviously, when you look at sectarianism from a distance, it looks ridiculous. It looks like, why the fuck are you fighting over these like some of it's just arbitrary, some of it's ahistorical, some of it's just like a long time ago. Like all these disputes just look insane. Like I'm Lebanese, I've seen it with my own family and people I know. Like sectarianism is it's a cancer. The problem is that when you see sectarian groups and they're all dug into their positions and they're very aggressive and they're very aggressively defensive, it makes sense to say that they should all stop and be multi.
So Gotham has another account. Logs back into that one. Logs back into that account and rushes back over here to be like, cringe. I'm not cringe. You're cringe. Bro was talking as above and below. The fuck out of here, homie. God damn, bro. Literally proving my point. Literally proving my point. Go hop on your third and your fourth and your fifth account. I'll fucking boot those as well, bro. God damn it. Ah, fucking pathetic.
Cultural, it doesn't make sense to go to one group and tell them to lower their guard and just let the other one and just hope that the other one will reciprocate. So when it comes to, that's why I would never tell Palestinians to just like completely throw down their arms regardless of any context, right? If you've got settlers coming in and encroaching on your territory, you should be allowed to chase them away, with whatever means you want. Fuck them. But when it comes to
this sounds like a dope ass position. Like, oh, what? LonerBox. Now we get to a LonerBox criticism. Look at that. Look at that. Look how we could do both. Look how we can multitask around here. We could mock and make fun of and call out both opportunists, Chris Kunzler and LonerBox. Can you believe it? What you won't see me do is be like, well, actually, on this date. Because that's so fucking unnecessary. You don't even need to get to that point. Because all that shit is used as smoke and mirrors as a distraction to the root issue of settler colonialization, to the root issue of European Western expansion and control. That's all it's done for. That's all it's done for. All right. Listen to what he says again.
Completely throw down their arms regardless. When it comes to, that's why I would never tell Palestinians to just like completely throw down their arms regardless of any context, right? If you've
We're never telling to completely. We need to focus on the words that he's using. These are propagandas. These are debate bros. They, just like Norm Finkelstein, choose their words carefully. Completely.
You've got settlers coming in and encroaching on your territory, you should be allowed to chase them away, with whatever means you want. Fuck them.
If you have settlers. Now to us, a settler, a colonizer, an invader remains one. As long as the settler colonial project exists. Fanon talks about this. He remains an alien to the land, right? Let me see if I can find this real quick. I should have it on Twitter, so I'm always quoting that shit. It's literally page 5 of The Wretched of the Earth. Or is page 5 about needing to stretch Marxism for a settler colonial. Let me double check. Maybe I could be wrong about what page number it is. I'm not as nerdy as CJ. Shout out to CJ the Radical. Here we go. And it was page 5. It contains both. Very nice. Literally right here. At the end of page 5, despite the success of his pacification, in spite of his appropriation, the colonist always remains a foreigner. It is not the factories, the estate, or the bank account which primarily characterize the ruling class. The ruling species is first and foremost the outsider from elsewhere, different from the indigenous population, the others. Also, I'm pretty sure that this section here on Marxism is the reason why Jacobin's very own Ben Burgess blocked me. This is why a Marxist analysis should always be slightly stretched when it comes to addressing the colonial issue. It is not just the concept of the pre-capitalist society, so effectively studied by Marx, which needs to be re-examined here. The serf is essentially different from the knight, but a reference to divine right is needed to justify this difference in status. In the colonies, the foreigner imposed himself using his cannons and machines. All right. I'm a little bit nerdy too. I can do this. Maybe it's because I have cheap ass fucking glasses that I need to do this. Both. Because I've broken too many by not like evenly handling my glasses, I guess. I don't know. I have cheap broke glasses that I get from the internet that probably don't have the accurate prescription, but it's close enough.
But when it comes to the Israeli side, when we talk about demographic concerns of Israelis are not invalid. Like,
sorry, really quick. Gotti Tuhati, I love that. I love that handle. No, the primary contradiction here is settler colonialism. It's settler colonialism is the primary contradiction. And settlers, especially left, Euro-Americans, want you to just solely focus on capitalism so they never have to examine the position that they hold as colonizers, as settlers, right? So by here and in Palestine and Australia, in colonized places, by rooting capitalism as the fundamental contradiction, you will be unable to avoid leading yourself into class reductionism, right? That's why, again, you see Brand Burgess bragging about the accusation of being a class reductionist. Because they view it as a primary contradiction. It's settler colonialism. Capitalism would not have been able to take root here, at least not in the way that we know it, or in the same process without settler colonialism, without the colonization of this land. Maybe it could have happened through trade and through demonstrating the superiority of Western civilization's embrace of capitalism. But that's not the reality that we live in. Capitalism was imposed upon this land, and it was done so because of settler colonization. That gave them access to the land, to the people, first and foremost. You're a race reductionist, which is what sure it is, buddy. Sure it is, mijo. I fucking hate Fanon. You're the real racist. I like this one. She got some or whatever the fuck. You could do it. I don't mind this shit. This shit's amusing, funny to me. However, when you start spamming weird ass fucking cringy ass so above and below, then I'm like, get the fuck out of here, bro. I don't want that fedora tipping bullshit around here. I really don't. Go hang out with Vosh the pedo. Go fucking Hassan apparently was a fedora guy. There you go. At best, you'll see me with the Tejano over here. That's about it. That's about it. I don't know one yet, but maybe next time I head out to Dallas for union work, union business, I might cop one. I'm not gonna lie. But the nice ones are expensive. I ain't trying. When am I gonna wear it out here? You know.
When the problem with nationalism is, especially if you're Jewish, nationalism as a whole is not good for out groups as it is. It's good for in groups.
Scotty Too Hottie wants to give us reparations. Well, to Africans and to Native Americans. Oh, how sweet. Ah. But let me guess, the Settler Colonial Project stays. Yeah.
Groups is not good for outgroups. That was the whole issue of the 20th and 19th century nationalism. Arab nationalism did not show any indication in the 20th century that it was going to be massively different for Jewish people. I just don't understand this idea where we think that Jews would exist in as a minority in the Middle East, especially if the majority is Palestinians, the one group that probably has more of an excuse to be anti-Semitic than any other group in the region. Why that would be anything other than like how that would.
All right, I do want to get through a lot of this. So this is a last comment to Scotty Too Hottie that I'll make, unless he wants to send a super chat. Yes, race reductionism is when you think racism is the main and primary problem. When did I ever say that? When did I ever say that? Or did I say that settler colonialism is the primary contradiction here? This I know you're not a genuine actor, as I know that your fifis are hurt. And that's okay, that's fine. I hope you're not a vendido, a sellout, a comprador. You might be, I don't know, and I don't care. But moving forward, you got to pay for my attention.
Guarantee multiculturalism and not just sectarian violence, but in the other way around.
Because I think, like, I don't wish to sort of lie in favor of the Ottoman Empire. I think that whole notion of tolerance was bullshit, that it basically only operated on the principle of, well, we'll be tolerant to you as long as you're doing what we're saying. That's like how they were tolerant. They were like sometimes, like almost instantaneously, someone could go from being a Christian accepted in the, you know, like the Ottoman vision of what wanted, like the Ottoman vision of society, to just being swapped instantly if you did something that was against the Ottoman Empire. Like, I think the best examples are really groups like the Kurds, or the ones that I've read about. And sorry, I've completely lost my train of thought. Oh wait, sorry. I think that generally in the Middle East, the treatment of Jewish people is incomparable to that of Europe. Like Europe, what Europe did for generations to Jewish people, and continued doing, that culminated really in the Holocaust, until after that point, Europeans to a large extent were like, well, we need to prevent that ever happening again. And since then, you know, there's been a decent amount of protection of Jewish people that's developed, and I think that that's a good and positive thing. But I just think this belief that, you know, Arabs can't stop being sectarian doesn't really fit with how, you know, the Europe and how America are ending up.
Well, it took Europe an entire world war to to get over their sectarianism.
This is where we get into a weird kind of like back and forth. And this is so annoying because you could use shorthand for a lot of this fucking conversation. What right did Europeans of Jewish, of Christian, of Catholic, of I don't give a fuck faith and background, what right did Europeans have to colonize Palestine? What fault the Palestinians have for the anti-Semitism in Europe? It's that simple.
But and obviously it took most of the Jews leaving for them to stop caring that much about Jews. When it comes to the Arab world, though, I don't think Arabs are inherently sectarian. Of course they're not. The problem is that we're expecting one group to give up, to lower their guard, and just hope that the other one does the same.
I voted for Kamala Harris.
Access Audio, thank you so much for the super chat. Is liberal tolerance better? Why is respectability politics a thing amongst racialized groups? Yep. Thank you for the super chat. We always have to compromise. Excuse me. I was having like dried mango with I don't know, with like sweet chili. They weren't spicy enough. But because they're not spicy enough overall, one of them will sink through. Scotty Too Hottie, I'm not reading that. You gotta pay up. Appreciate it. Access Audio, thank you so much again for the super chat. Yeah, I mean, that's really what they want. Is they want us to play nice with them. They want us to tolerate them. They want us to, you know, be their fucking friendly neighbor. as they benefit from their exploitation of our labor, of the land, as they benefit from decades of colonization, if not centuries. They want us to just push that aside and play nice with them and get along. And that's why the whole assimilation that was pushed as integration, as all of us getting along, is and was a tool of the colonizer to get us to become complacent and to teach us that seeking justice was really backwards, that seeking justice is refusal to become civilized, that seeking justice and holding them accountable for their crimes was stopping progress. Thank you again for the super chat.
Or it reciprocates a peaceful offer, which I just don't think will happen. As far as European anti-Semitism goes, you're right. The Arab world was not anything near as what Europe was in the 20th century. But we also know that Arab leaders were not immune to European anti-Semitism, because obviously things like blood libel started to come into Damascus in the late 1800s. We know that there was actually one blood libel case, a very minor one, but it happened in Jerusalem, and it was actually backed by Muslim clerics. We know that obviously al-Husseini, a very popular figure in Palestine, was just a flat-out Nazi. We know that his cousin, the head of the Palestine Arab Congress, believed in stab in the back myth. He believed that the Bolsheviks were, yes.
Really?
Yeah, he believed that the Bolshevik revolution was done by Jews, and also that the stab in the back was done by Jews. Yeah.
I'd never heard that about Musa Kazim, actually.
Who gives a
he did
fuck?
moderate later, obviously.
Who gives a fuck? And even immediately, LonerBox. Well, he did walk that shit back later. He toned it down. None of this. None of that. I don't care. I do not care if, I mean, they try using the whole Arab thing, but we're speaking specifically of Palestinians. I don't care if Palestinians were each and every single one individually, including Jewish Palestinians, if they were all the most hardened anti-Semites in the world. I do not care if HH looked at them and blushed. All right? I don't care if they had to turn them away the way that they turned the French away. Right? The Nazis had to tell the French, stop. You're sending us too much Jewish people. Slow it down. That's how vile and disgusting the French were during World War II. That does not justify the colonization of Palestine. It doesn't fucking matter. But of course, Chris Kunzler, because for him, this is all an academic exercise. This is plain fucking pretend for him. This isn't real. He has literally no skin in the game. I'm a race reductionist. He could be like, really interesting? What book? Where did you read that? Oh, wow. G. Willikers. Say it ain't so. Instead of, how does that justify the colonization of Palestine? Jesus.
There's a bit of a rumor that he was bribed by Zionists, but I don't know. Not confirmed.
Who wrote about that? I'd be interested to hear.
Because
I've seen like a much more sympathetic reading of Musa Kazim. But just on this topic, right? I feel like
I do love the name though. Musa Kazim is a fucking badass name. I can admit to that. In that sense, I'm glad that they brought it up.
In terms of Palestinians, they are expected to lay down their arms, right? Like they did in the West Bank. The one-gun policy instituted by Abbas pretty much disarmed all militants in the West Bank. Yeah, there are still a small number of militant groups like the Lion's Den in Jenin, but like organized resistance doesn't really exist in the same way in the West Bank. And the thing is that Israel didn't lay down their arms. It was, and the international community over and over again expects of Palestinians to lay down their arm. Even the most leftist Israeli, right? Like the person who's an outsider, Yair Golan, what he actually believes is that they should still have like military dominance over any Palestinian state, right? So like my problem is that the basic premise of the only two-state solution that we're going to get in the context of like the really existing Israel is one where Palestinians have to lay down their arms, but Israel still gets to keep its really powerful military.
So that can get you into a debate about what, like, just like the power imbalances that already exist, or like factual realities on the ground. I can put it bluntly if you want. Like, the fact is that Israelis benefit from violence. Like, Israeli right wingers, at least, they benefit from a degree of violence happening in the region because they'll win and they'll use it to get more territory. Palestinians do not benefit from violence in the slightest.
I voted for Kamala Harris. You got a problem?
Barutu, thank you for the super chat. The crushing of Puerto Rican independence is something that isn't talked about enough. From Pedro, or is it Albizu Campos, the 70s revolutionaries. Yeah, that's funny that you mentioned that, because in this conversation, both LonerBox and Chris Kunzler bring up the colonization of the so-called Americas and the region. They talk about Alaska, they talk about Puerto Rico, and spoiler, but LonerBox is like, you don't see America repressing Puerto Ricans, people in Alaska, this and that. Hawaiians, I think he mentioned. He's not American. He's not an American. But still, when you're pretending to be some type of expert or knowledgeable in settler colonization, you would assume that you would be aware of the crushing might of U.S. imperialism upon Puerto Rican independence fighters, as well as in the Philippines. It's just, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. Again, this is part of the reason why I was comfortable to finally start streaming. Not these individuals themselves. They're both more well-read, or at least have their bullet points or talking trees down the way that I hope never to have. Truly, I hope to never become this. This to me is, it isn't human. It isn't human to me. It really isn't. Even in high school, when I was I'm a loudmouth. When I was in speech and debate, one of the main reasons why I joined it was because, oh, cool, like I could travel with them, dope. And I remember doing one or two like debate, duo debate shit, and I was like, ugh, just boring as fuck. Give me impromptu. So I, and then the parliamentary shit was a little bit more entertaining because you have a whole room full. And I'll be honest, at that age, also the idea was that the gender imbalance was to your benefit as a young kid, But even then, I was like, nah, it's not even fucking worth it. This is also like pretend, right? With impromptu, I fucking love that shit because it's like, I don't know, I prefer to embrace that form of intelligence. Is how quickly can you like create a narrative from these random fucking suggestions and just topics. How good really are you? I don't know, I prefer that. But I'm just biased. But very early on, for me, like, debate was something that was kind of like boring. It really is. This is why when you hear me criticize them, I'm not really, well, okay, I have to be honest. I do listen to this as background noise, right? If I want to like get a little rage, a little bit upset, right? If I haven't dealt with like heavy traffic in a while, I'll throw on some fucking debates. I won't lie. I'm not gonna pretend to be something I'm not. I'm not gonna pretend to be above it.
Like, maybe there are some edge cases of people chasing settlers away or disrupting infrastructure, but obviously, just broadly speaking, do we agree that Hamas's strategy and the Axis strategy was a total failure?
What do you mean? What do you mean a total failure?
For achieving Palestinian dignity, rights, anything?
I think it depends.
Was that the objective of Operation Alaska Blood? Was that the objective of October 7th? Because considering the actual objectives, it was successful. Somehow trying to put the blame on that mission for the actions of the Zionist entity in using that opportunity to commit a genocide doesn't fall on the Palestinian resistance forces, especially when the hostage exchange still occurred, when that was one of its primary objectives. It still occurred. Ooh, Gospel. Nobody tell Gospel. Nobody tell him. Gospel Lydeer, nobody tell him. I want you to guess who's who. I want you to guess who's who.
That's what you look at their aims as. If you take their aims as achieving Palestinian sovereignty, then yeah, you're probably right. Right now, they're in a horrendous situation. However, if you look at the other aims of Sinwar, that is like kind of placing the Palestinian national cause back at the top of the agenda, delegitimizing Israel, and generally showing the world what Israel is actually like, the things that it had already been doing in the West Bank. You know, it accelerated them definitely in Gaza, but the structure of mass killing, mass oppression did not start after October the 7th. And so in terms of like Hamas's aim of defeating and destroying Israel, I think they knew fully that that was implausible on October the 7th. However, what I will say is that like in terms of the aim of like delegitimizing Israel, I don't think Israel's ever been in a worse position right now. I think it's something like 40% of American Jews even think that Israel is committing genocide or committed genocide in the Gaza Strip. The amount of young Jewish people who you now see speaking out and generally opposing Israel in a way that didn't exist before has grown hugely. And I would say consciousness amongst the general populations of like a country like ours. I mean, I know you live in Scotland. Maybe you're a bit of a Braveheart guy, but I don't know. I think that the thing is that, like, if you look at the general consciousness, the opinion of Israel is in the gutter. And I think it will increasingly become difficult for even, say, for like governments to cling to it. I think it's a major problem of the Labour Party that it still feels a need to cling to Israel and not offer any significant change on policy against Israel. And I think even for the Republican Party in the US, as these young Republicans grow up, it's a worrying thing. Like, I think that all of this stuff is troubling, and I think that it is only a problem that will grow for Israel. And I'm sorry if this seems like a contrived explanation.
So, okay. The reason why I brought up my examples and not these is because, for example, the young right turning against the Zionist project. They're doing it rooted in anti-Semitism. They don't give a fuck about Palestinians. They don't. You think Jake Shields, Nick Cruz's best friend, Revolutionary Sellout's best friend, Jake Shields, cares about Palestinians? Of course not. He's just anti-Semitic. You think all the young people that are like, Charlie Kirk, it was Mossad, he was about to turn, he was about to tell the truth about the Zionist entity. Right? They call it Israel. You think they're doing that because they care about Palestinians? No, it's because of anti-Semitism, because it's easy. Right? This is why Zionists push anti-Semitism. They don't just, pull the anti-Semitism card every chance they get, but they also push it because to be a Zionist is inherently to be anti-Semitic. And anti-Semitism only benefits them. It's a fucking win-win, right? So keep that in mind. But he also pushes this other thing. What was it right before this about the voting stuff? Oh, yeah. About young Jewish people admitting that the Zionist project is committing a genocide. And plenty of them acknowledge apartheid. And that still did not make him anti-Zionist. They will continue to send their children, when they have them, to these Zionist institutions. I've asked time and time again, please show me one major American Jewish institution that is anti-Zionist. Zohran Mamdani, the mayor-elect, who has now crushed two, not one, but two. And DSA challenges to Democratic Party establishment incumbents, when he went to a synagogue, the rabbi literally said, I am a Zionist. Mamdani himself said, I will have Zionists of all spectrums in his administration. I'm sure some of those will acknowledge that the Zionist Project is committing a genocide. So these weird, arbitrary kind of, oh, you have to acknowledge apartheid. Oh, you have to acknowledge genocide. That's the easy fucking stuff. A hypercritical liberal Zionist like Sam Cedar, I wouldn't even call him hypercritical, I would just call him critical. Hypercritical would be Norm Finkelstein. They're still fucking Zionists, regardless. And they'll acknowledge all those things. They will be critical and acknowledge all the faults of the Zionist project and still support its continued existence. Emma Vigeland will still support its continued existence, will not call for decolonization. Hassan Piker calls for emancipation of the Palestinians. I'm sure whatever Democratic Party strategist he coordinates with found that emancipation was the appropriate word because it's not one that I quite see often. Maybe around rad-lib circles it's more popular, but decolonization has always been what I've heard and been around.
But I don't think we can frame it exclusively through armed struggle is going to achieve instantaneously the aim of dignity and a state. But I think that in other ways it has achieved the things that Sinwar kind of thought, I'm going to do this because of that.
Yeah, and that's great if you, obviously that's great if you believe that the Israeli opinion doesn't matter. Like, we're not going to treat this like apartheid South Africa. We're not going to consider the opinions of the people who have the power and actually are going to turn things over. Because obviously that approach was very much, we need to assure, like at least in part, they needed to assure the white population that there was a future for them in the country, that they were not going to just get subject to revenge killings, and it was going to be about peace, reconciliation, nation building. If we don't care about that from the Israeli side, then you can have all the international pressure you want. The fact is that you have a population there that, one, for whether they're correct or not, they see themselves as indigenous, but more importantly, they see themselves as with their backs to the wall and with nowhere else to go. So if all you're going to do is disempower Israel and isolate them on the world stage, well, who benefits from that in Israel? The right-wingers do. The right-wingers are the ones who constantly go to Israeli left-wingers and say, look, no one likes us. Everyone fucking hates us. That's the only way that we can ever stand strong is if we are aggressive and if we are assertive and we don't let people build up infrastructure and military stuff over in South Lebanon and Gaza. Every time we see a new tunnel or a new weapons import, we're going to blow it up right away. We're not going to let them amass 2,000 rockets or 200,000 like last time. We're just going to keep expanding into the West Bank because fuck them. They don't want peace anyway. That all benefits the right wing in Israel. They love that. So you're never going to get rid of that one single issue, is that you have this group that sees themselves with their backs on the wall and with nowhere else to go, and they're going to be as aggressive as possible to assert that position. And those are the ones that get more popular. And you cannot be an Israeli left-winger in an environment where the entire world is shitting on you. Meanwhile, groups like Hamas or Al-Aqsa Martyrs or PIJ or anyone else are kind of just getting almost a pass or just getting little condemnations every now and then, but can mostly just kind of go on and keep on doing what they're doing. And there's no broad ideological shift from either region. Same with the West Bank as well. Like, one of the reasons they're so embedded in the West Bank is it's not just because of wanting settlers wanting land. That's obviously one reason, but another reason is that they think as soon as they leave the West Bank, Hamas comes into power, and then it'll be a place 15 or 16 times bigger than Gaza, taken over by a group that wants to militarize the entire region.
But
so you're not going to get rid of that perception.
But I think
So here's the thing. The reason why Bernie Sanders hates Benjamin Netanyahu, hates the rabid reactionary Zionist wing, is because he recognizes, just how liberals here recognize, that will lead to the eventual implosion of the Zionist settler colonial project. That will lead to its own destruction. Golda Meir said it. Let me pull it up. Liberal Zionists hate the rabid, frenzied, zealot usually religious Zionist wing. Here we go. What was going on? Mondo Wise. Come on. All right. Let's see here. Where's she at? Where's she at? All right. All right. The article cites minutes of a January 19th, 1971 cabinet meeting under the title of Statements and Announcements Regarding Settlements and Outposts. In it, Prime Minister Mayer made a special request to the ministers. Quote, before we move forward with our discussions, there's something I'd like to ask. It was our habit that for anything that had to do with settlements, outposts, land expropriation, and so on, we would simply do and not talk about it. Lately, this line of understanding has broken down, and I'm asking the ministers, for the sake of our homeland, for the sake of our homeland, for the sake of our homeland, to hold back. Talk less and do as much as possible. But the main thing, as much as possible, is to talk less. We were not used to ministers appearing in settlements in a ceremony with the press and so on. I ask that it be the same in the future. Because they feel that this approach, and they're correct, gained them legitimacy. This gained them international recognition. This gained them protection. This allowed them to maintain the illusion. What the foaming at the mouth Zionists, they're all Zionists. But the one shaking, uncontrollably, raging, demanding, being bombastic about their war crimes. They're exposing the fucking game. They're exposing the illusion. And that is counterproductive to the long-term Zionist project that goes against how they moved when they were legitimized by international law or gain international recognition. That is the battle between Zionists. That is the intra-Zionist battle. And that's why Bernie Sanders hates Benjamin Netanyahu, because he feels that he's putting the Zionist project at risk. And they are. It was the rabid Zionists and their complete bloodlust, their impatience, their uncontrollable greed. This is all anti-Semitic, blood libel. I don't give a look. Emma Vigeland already accused me of being anti-Semitic. It's over. It's a wrap. My whatever career I had in this industry is gone. The white woman accusations have been charged. I have been marked for life. Whereas the liberal Zionists, like Bernie, like Sam Cedar, Golden Meir here, Peter Beinart, they recognize patience, wait for an opportunity, focus on maintaining legitimacy and maintaining international support, if not indifference, but not hatred, not stigma. You want to be the perpetual victim. But this doesn't work when we're witnessing a genocide.
One thing I find really difficult to to take that into account is the Palestinian Authority engaged in a heavy crackdown on Hamas in 2009. They arrested thousands of Hamas members. They arrested people who were sympathetic to Hamas. They closed charities. They arrested preachers who they gave they said gave sermons that were too pro-Hamas. And so, like, I'm sorry, I don't feel the need to pander to the feelings of, like, the Israelis. Like, I genuinely don't. And I think that also I understand, like, the opposition to these right-wing, like, largely religious fundamentalist organizations in general. However, none of them engage in a structure of violence that is comparable to Israel. And I think the bigger problem isn't, like, what the Western left are saying. I think the bigger problem is that our governments continue to cling to this genocidal country, this country that, you know, is in violation of so many laws, engages in apartheid, violates international law constantly. And I think it needs to have its back to the wall. I think that that's how Israelis need to feel. And I don't care if the right benefits, because I think that ultimately what has to happen is Israel has to be held to account. And those right-wingers are just an expression of things that the Israeli left do and then hide it. Like, I think a good example is Sabra and Shatila. Sabra and Shatila, yes, was basically Sharon's plan. But when Sharon is about to be held to account, he goes to Rabin, he goes to the leader of Labour at that time, whose name I have somehow, it escapes me, don't know. Do you know the answer in the 80s, the leader of Labour?
In 82?
Shafir? Was it? No.
Yeah, no, not Shamir. You're thinking of Perez, but was he in 82?
Perez. I think it was Perez. Anyway, let's just say it's Perez. He turns to them and says, "You trained the phalangists. You used them in Tel al-Zatar. You sent them in, and now you're moralizing on us for doing it in Sabra and Shatila, just because there's outrage, basically, because of the size of the invasion of Lebanon." And so I think I find this really hard to be so worried about the Israeli right when the Israeli left are doing the same things. You know, settlements expanded under Rabin, settlements expanded they started under Labour prime ministers. Yitzhak Rabin, during his first term, had the most aggressive settlement drive in the 1970s. And sure, it's expanded by Begin once he gets into power, but it's not like it wasn't happening. And so I think that Israel as a country and as Zionism as an ideology has to be held to account, because it's not producing any differences. Like, I'm sorry.
Real quick, because it's not wrong. I don't understand how Hassan and people like this do this.
70s, and sure, it's expanded by Begin once he gets into power, but it's not like it wasn't happening. And so I think that Israel as a country and as Zionism as an ideology has to be held to account, because it's not producing any differences. Like, I'm sorry, it's just not.
I mean, these differences are there if you just, like, they are there. When it comes to settlements, obviously, before the 6-Day War, I think there was one person in the cabinet who had big ideas about going into the West Bank and actually taking it over, and it was Dayan. The other ones didn't really. Like, that's why they tried to get the Jordanians to stop shooting on them before they went in. When it comes to settlements afterwards, Rabin, when he semi-froze settlements, he made it.
No, look. Whatever criticisms I have of Chris Kunzler, I want to make it very clear, he's very knowledgeable. He has the right knowledge, although we disagree in certain positions. Let's put it that way. But he's not wrong. He's not wrong. I guess just the conclusions is the main difference here. Because he's right. It's all about the pacing. It's all about the quantity in which they're moving at, right? It's the slow creep. It's the slow moving colonization. It's the quiet behavior. It's doing it just how they set up the kibbutz in the cover of night. It's making sure that it's not causing too much attention, that it's not attracting too many eyes, that it's done discreetly, and that it becomes normalized, and that before you know it, you turn around and they're already at your fence. They're already at your door. That is the liberal Zionist approach to it, and has been successful. And that's why Bernie Sanders, Sam Cedar, Peter Beinart, that's why they all advocate for it. Ultimately, they all advocate because they understand that it works. It has gotten them here. And it's really difficult for, I mean, this is the appropriate gesture, for LonerBox to combat this. And so they have to hide behind the whole, well, that's the lesser of the two evils. Or would you rather that or a genocide? Not understanding or trying to minimize or normalize the status quo of the silent genocide, the silent ethnic cleansing, the silent expulsion, removal, and the extermination of the indigenous people there.
The delineation, whether you agree with it or not, between security and political settlements. Even Barack didn't do that. And also, if we talk about settlement
sorry, can I just ask you a
expansion,
question? When is that the one in the 70s? The was that
no,
when he made
Rabin.
that
This is
distinction?
Rabin in the 90s.
Okay.
This is when he was, because he wasn't in office in the 70s.
He was.
Or he wasn't
Rabin
the
was
prime
in
minister.
office in 74.
Not prime minister.
Wasn't he prime minister 74 to 77?
No.
Jesus.
Not Yitzhak. Was he?
I think
might
so.
be wrong,
Yeah.
actually.
I think you may just be wrong about that.
Okay.
I think
I'm
he
talking
goes
about
out
the
because he's
90s
corrupt.
anyway.
But I mean, actually, I'll let you continue speaking.
Yeah, I'll continue. So, yeah, in the 90s, after the Oslo Accords, is when Rabin decides to delineate between security and political settlements, and he stops with the ones that he considers to be political, as in like the ones that are anywhere past the green line. He's not interested in allowing them to continue. Even Barack didn't do that. We also, I mean, whether you agree with it or not, the fact is that had Camp David,
It's just cute because, like, well, he made the distinction between settlements that are for safety and security purposes and those strictly for political purposes. The issue is that that motherfucker gets to determine that. The issue is that the colonizer gets to choose, pick and choose, which is the political and which is for security purposes. The fact that he has that power is our concern, is what we object to. Let's move this further along here.
Made for smuggling, I believe.
Oh, here we go.
granted to that when Hamas have this opportunity, they militarize. They put that way in front of any kind of development of infrastructure or allowing people to try and build a better life or education or anything like that. They put it on military installations and tunnels sprawling across the entire place. You were wrong earlier when you said that you don't think the Sinwar or the Al-Aqsa, the Al-Qassam brigades didn't expect to overwhelm Israel. We don't actually know what they expected, because given Sinwar's rhetoric and given what was actually said on the day by Mohammed Deif, we know that they were calling on the rest of the Arab world, and especially they were calling on Palestinians inside Israel. They were calling on the West Bank and on Hezbollah to join into the fight right there and then, because the time was now. And they saw that Israel was, because of the Supreme Court reforms, that they were at an all-time level of weakness. They thought that that was the opportunity, and we don't know. Maybe they did think they were going to win, because the way that they were talking and the way that they fired up their soldiers definitely sounded like that. Had what they
right, because usually when you're about to carry out a military operation, the main thing that you have to do when, you know, speaking to your troops is is to be super, like, hyper realistic about the outcome. You have to just really ground them in reality. You never want to hype them up. You never want to encourage them to, you know, to increase that bravado, that courage. You never want to do that. What you want to do is be like, look, I think you're going to make it. You, not completely. You're going to come back with some scars for sure. All right. Now, yeah, that's what you want. Right before you go into battle, what you want is a dissertation on the realities and brutalities of war. Like, that is necessary for Palestinians to know or to be reminded of. It is so fucking funny. Like, not the way they were talking. No fucking shit. But again, he pushes his whole narrative about, well, it's because of Hamas who chose to arm themselves and focus on building tunnels other than, you know, building. Am I echoing? Building academic institutions, infrastructure, this and that. What happened to the hospitals? What happened to the hospitals in Gaza that they did build? What happened to the universities? What happened to the schools? What happened? They all got destroyed. They got turned into rubble. So what people like LonerBox advocate for Basically, hey, these savages need to civilize themselves and invest in their future and not in their own defense. You're essentially building a sandcastle. And the colonizing wave is just building up energy, waiting for its opportunity to destroy everything that you've built. So without arming yourselves, without preparing for the unavoidable conflict, moment of altercation, of combat, if you're not doing that, then you are failing your people. Because we just went over it. Chris Kunzler just went over it. The settler colonial project was never ended. It never stopped. The pacing, its timing, how it moved and how it operated was different, but it was still occurring. But remember, he said earlier, LonerBox said he would never call for the complete disarming of the Palestinian people.
When it happened, had 1 or 2 million Palestinian Israelis decided to rise up as well, had the West Bank risen up, had Hezbollah decided to unload on October 7th, had the militia groups in Syria decided to try and fire in, maybe they would have. Maybe they would have had Iran joined in the same day and launched their ballistic missiles. Yeah, maybe they would have. But again, I don't think you really, I think you're, maybe I'm being a bit presumptuous, but I don't think you would care. I think you'd be okay with October 7th just continuing all the way until Israel's gone.
Chat, would you care? I'd care. I'd absolutely care. I'd care to celebrate the way that I did the day of, or the night of, I should say, over here. I definitely care. I would go into debt during a fucking party. That's caring, LonerBox. I would care.
Regardless of how many people died.
Not the way you want me to care, but I'd care.
Okay with October 7th just continuing all the way until Israel's gone, regardless of how many people died in the process?
I mean, I think it kind of depends in the context of what happens, right? Like, I don't want mass civilian casualties. I don't. Unfortunately, the problem with
I don't understand. Do you have a sponsorship deal? Are you not viewer funded? Chris Kunzler, do you have a contract with Nike, Adidas? What are you promoting here? That you're spewing this nonsense about settlers being civilians. Colonizers, each and every one of them, are there to settle the land, to occupy the space taken from the indigenous population. They're all combatants. Every settler is a combatant. That is why they have forced conscription, right? Because they recognize, the Settler Colonial Project recognizes that every body, every physical body is meant to take the land and the place of a Palestinian, of the indigenous population. So this concept, pushing this narrative of civilians, is normalizing the presence of the Zionist colonizer in Palestine. You are more intelligent than I am. You are more well-read than I am. You are more educated than I am. You have a larger platform than I do. You're getting compensated a whole lot better than me. How is it that I recognize that distinction and you either don't or pretend not to? Which is it? It's not both. So which is it?
me and what I think of Israel as I don't want
in the process.
I mean, I think it kind of depends in the context of what happens, right? Like, I don't want mass civilian casualties. I don't. Unfortunately, the problem with me and what I think of Israel as a structure and a society is Israel has always premised itself on eliminating the indigenous people. There are some changes that occur at the start. There are some different modes of settlement tried. But if you look into the logic of, say, something like the Jewish National Fund and the early Zionist organizations there, they basically try and do away with the Palestinians. But On the topic of, I really want to go back to one thing a couple of things you said there about Gaza, because I think that they're so important. Now, tunnels were first made for smuggling, I believe. Like, tunnels were made to smuggle things because they were living in a siege, right? They were in this situation where, you know, Israel withdrew, but they reconstituted around Gaza's border. They instituted a crippling siege of the area, and the tunnels were initially used for smuggling. Israel never stopped acquiring huge amounts of weaponry. So are you really surprised that a group whose legitimacy was premised on the notion, well, look, we've driven the settlers out through armed resistance. That's why Israel views these settlements as no longer necessary. Whether that's true or not, whether it came down to just Sharon wanting to freeze the peace process in formaldehyde, I believe someone close to him said. But ultimately, Hamas are engaging with these things, and Hamas have legitimacy because of the occupation, right? Like, I don't think it's hard to see that like, the PA have lost so much legitimacy through collaboration, through offering Palestinians nothing, and that, you know, in Gaza, whatever it may be, they don't live under the yoke directly of Israeli occupation. But on the second thing, I am so perplexed. Like, I am so perplexed by the notion that Palestinians could have built a better society in Gaza, right? Like, it was under a crippling siege. Like, surely that's something you admit, first of all. But second of all, the de-development, the economic destruction of the Gaza Strip largely happened during the Israeli occupation. This is written about by Sarah Roy. She talks about economic de-development that occurs, and largely...
So one thing that I want to talk about, and we might skip a little bit forward here, in regards to this, his defense of the tunnels being used to combat the, you know, the blockade and to smuggle in much needed resources. I don't like it because it again, it diminishes the need for arms. It's a necessity. Just like food, just like water, just like medicine, arms are a necessity for indigenous people being colonized or under colonization. It is as essential as water and medicine. Because without it, you won't use the medicine. You won't have the time and place to drink the water. You won't have the time and place to eat.
The permit system that Israel had for a while. Now, the permit system operated so beneficially for Israel rather than Palestinians because basically you could take a huge amount of Palestinians when the Israeli economy was good to engage in, you know, labor in the country. And then when you didn't need them, you could just do away with them. How is any kind of meaningful society, after decades of occupation, decades of extreme violence, going to build something better, something good, something that's like different and meaningful? Because the PA have failed and they've denounced armed struggle. They haven't built something good for the general population. It's just a society that's like entirely reliant on the Palestinian Authority and people policing other Palestinians. It's not a meaningful existence. It's not like the kind of liberationary change that we're looking for. And there's no way that Palestinians could have made that in Gaza.
Okay, coming to tunnels, whether or not the first tunnels were for smuggling, I don't even know if that's correct, because they were kidnapping people from 2005, 2006 from those tunnel crossings. They were using kidnapping. And also, one of the things they were smuggling was weapons. So it's like, yeah, they were made for smuggling, but the timeline is just off there.
You see? It was just for food. It was just for essentials. It's just for medicine and water. It wasn't for those evil weapons. What was all that for? What was that? And what you're doing is you're vilifying. You're putting a negative stigma on armed resistance by saying, well, no, initially they were for good reasons. They're still being used for good fucking reasons. Again, this isn't me trying to be like the most extreme, most edgy, the narrative matters. The way that we frame this shit matters. Because what you're doing when you say, no, those tunnels were initially for necessities like water and food and medicine. Not only are you opening yourself up to criticism from people like LonerBox, as he's doing right now, but let's say let's say he's wrong, and let's say you were correct, that they were initially just used for that. At what point is it okay for Palestinians to start using those tunnels for more than just the essentials? For you, Chris Kunzler, excuse me. At what point is it okay to brag about, to talk about, to be proud of, to support, to advocate for using those tunnels to smuggle armed resistance in order to use it for self-defense purposes against colonization? Because for me, it's from day one, because I view it as essential as food, as water, as medicine. The right to defend yourself. And so you conceded that. You aided in vilifying armed resistance against colonization. And still this was going to try and screw you over with that point. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, this shit's so fucking, it's stupid. It's pointless. It's counterproductive. You're normalizing a narrative that goes against self-defense.
Withdrawal came in 2005. The crippling siege that you described wasn't imposed in its totality until 2007, after Hamas took over, as in it happened after the rockets, after the kidnappings, after the weapon smuggling. The fact is that it's not, there's a spectrum, okay? I'm not saying that Gaza could have become Singapore. It wasn't a state when Sharon pulled out, with the formaldehyde, whatever. It wasn't a state when Sharon pulled out. It was a territory, but it was also a territory with a lot of international aid, more per head than most groups in the world get, as far as groups that require it. They could have built something other than 500 kilometers of tunnels. They could have built something other than massive weapon stockpiles or enough booby traps for, in Sinwar's word, thousands of buildings. They could have done something other than that, and they chose not to, because again, they didn't think, what did they think they were going to do with all these weapons and arms, other than what? What was the expectation there of doing all that? Because they were launching attacks into Israel. They were still launching rockets. They were still kidnapping soldiers, or kidnapping eventually civilians as well. That's what they were doing with those tunnels. Just because of the first one, even if the first ones were just for smuggling food or whatever, I'm still not even sure that's true. But assuming that's all it was for, then what were they for after that? They were not. That's not their primary purpose. It's not. What's defensive about Hamas? Hamas doesn't think that if you want to defend yourself against Israeli, who's more well defended? Gaza.
It's because these people, like LonerBox, either don't understand what defense means, or they pretend not to. These people think that when you're being attacked, somebody's fucking, right? Laying it on you. They think the only thing you can do to defend yourself is to shell up. That's the only thing you can do. That's the only thing you're allowed to do to fit the description of self-defense. God forbid you fucking counter a hit. God forbid you swing back, because that is no longer defense. Somehow in their distorted reality of, who knows what, Zionist propaganda. But when you're being attacked or being occupied, when someone's holding you down, when someone has a knife in your back, and you decide to swing back, not just shell up, that is still self-defense.
City or Ramallah. Ramallah doesn't have tunnels sprawling all the way underneath it.
Who was better defended against like huge amounts of settler incursions into their land up until October the 7th? And even now, you know, it's a dangerous situation for an Israeli settler to go into Gaza. Like, seriously, for example, in Vietnam, the reason that they dug tunnels, they were dug by families and stuff. It was to fight against the French occupation. Like, old people would throw away the dirt, kids would like grab it up, and you know.
All right, we're gonna jump ahead a little bit. I appreciate y'all being here. Normally I don't cover these debates, but I noticed that a couple people were fans of or supporting Chris over here. Let me make sure I find the right timestamp, but in case I don't, let me go ahead and push this forward.
I voted for Kamala Harris. You got a problem?
Thank you so much, Emblem Fate, for the super chat. Self-defense, be a turtle, not a Ninja Turtle. It's funny. I have a poster that was gifted to me of the Ninja Turtles, and when I let me multitask. And when I received it, I'm not gonna lie, I was like, what? I didn't feel like I was the biggest fucking Ninja Turtle like fan. So I'm like, why the fuck? I'm like, all right, that's cool. I appreciate it, but I wouldn't like. What made you a mange? I sounded fucking Brazilian for a second. What made you like give me this gift? Like, I'm not the biggest Ninja Turtle. I don't have any. Well, no, I have like one Ninja Turtle comic, but that was like after the fact. And then I started thinking about it. I'm like, well, no, I was a big fan when I was younger. I just didn't really. I think and I'll get right back to it. I'm sorry, getting distracted. Who was that director? Who directed Michael Bay? Once Michael Bay came out with his stuff, I was like, I'm over it. But some of the cartoons that I caught were a lot of fun. And I just started realizing, I look around. I have Daredevil, I have Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, I have Dragon Ball Z, I have Naruto, right? And it made perfect sense with the Ninja Turtles. Because like, it's all rooted in martial arts. So I thought that shit was funny. Let me go ahead and find this and then we'll move forward. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I had sent this a lot sooner than any of this shit, but or did I save it in the drafts? Yeah, I might have saved it in the drafts. That's interesting. Because it was about this very same no, it's gonna be on the reply because I tagged Chris Kunzler on this. I'm pretty sure it's gonna be there. Yeah, it is. Just in case we skip it, which just a little context here. Oh. Here we go.
Was ultimately the goal of building a Jewish state in Palestine. The prerequisite of it is the elimination of the indigenous people who actually live there, because as Jabotinsky puts it, they will always stand up and fight back. And that is a reasonable position. Like, it just fundamentally is. I'm sorry. In no other context would you be like, yeah, you know what, I think that, like, settlers have a right to go over and dispossess whoever lived there just because, I don't know, they have this supreme right to the land. It's wrong, it's immoral, and it's unjust. The British should have acted better then. But now when we look at the state today, we see its problems and we see its actions, and we see that it is a total failure in protecting Jewish people, that it has increased the situation and animosity towards Jewish people worldwide.
Which I hate this narrative. Sam Cedar pushes the narrative too. Well, no. The Zionist project did not achieve its goal in creating a safe haven for the Jewish diaspora. What if it did? Chris Kunzler, what if it did? Sam Cedar, what if it did? What if it didn't actually, increase anti-Semitism? What if it actually served the proposed purpose of creating a safe haven for the Jewish diaspora? Would you then support it? If not, then why use that as a fucking talking point? Why even fucking bring up that angle? Unless you're trying to appeal to Zionist sentiment. Why are you wasting your time doing that? Why is that part of your prerogative? Why is that part of your goals? To appeal to the alleged consciousness of the colonizer. When would that have worked? When has that ever worked? Please demonstrate. Show me. When has that ever worked before? No. The myth surrounding your settler colonial project actually isn't true. Let me dispel that myth for you. Will you join us now? Will you join us now and deconstructing your settler colonial project that you benefit from, that you materially benefit from? Now that you know the myth isn't real? That you were lied to? Are you on our side now? It's never fucking happened. It's never gonna happen. Because that myth will be replaced by another myth if they even listen to you. Where are we here?
You look at the state today, we see its problems and we see its actions, and we see that it is a total failure in protecting Jewish people, that it has increased the situation and animosity towards Jewish people worldwide.
We actually do that with quite a few countries. Like, no one's trying to destroy America, or anyone who is a LARPer who should
But there's
probably not get taken
a
seriously.
fundamental difference between America, right? Which is that America
What is the fundamental difference? And to all the LARPers in the chat, what is the fundamental difference? Right? Because this is what Chris Kunzler is saying. No. My counter argument to that is there's a difference. What will be the difference, chat? What will be the difference? Let's find out. Let's see here.
We actually do that with quite a few countries. Like, no one's trying to destroy America, or anyone who is a LARPer who should
But there's
probably not get taken
a
seriously.
fundamental difference between America, right? Which is that America managed to eliminate the vast majority of its indigenous population and the alternative society that it posed. The different context with Israel is that it still has an open frontier engaged in direct settlement of Palestinian land that can be stopped. The entire state can be reimagined as a state in which all human beings have, on the basis of just a right to exist and a right to dignity, can exist there. That's the fundamental difference with America. The natives are not gone. They're not fully dead. But largely their position is cemented, and there are just not enough of them because they genocided enough of them, effectively.
That's why I'm trying.
Chris Kunzler, the position of the indigenous people here has been cemented. So they had to assimilate. So their resistance is futile. And his whole narrative is he wants to make sure that Palestinians achieve liberation before that occurs to them. Because what? Because if the settler colonial project exterminates enough of you, displaces enough of you, Chris Kunzler will abandon you. Will say that your position has been cemented for now and for eternity. Abandon all hope, ye who go to fucking Chris Kunzler over here. What did I tell y'all to remember what he said? Let's see who was being good in class today. Chat, what did I ask you to keep in mind? Who remembers what I said? It was at 34 minutes and 42 seconds. Because now he's talking about the position of indigenous people here being cemented. Oh, no. It's not like that. It's different for Palestinians. What did he say? What switched up? What changed from this statement here at 34:42?
State is, I would rather invest in the impossible, you know, and I would rather
invest in the impossible. But when it's not financially beneficial to you, when you can't clout farm, when you can't base your whole online identity on claiming to be the voice of Palestinians and doing these senseless, pointless debates with bad actors like LonerBox, who literally went on a Zionist propaganda tour with the accused pedo and accused consent violator Destiny. Why even give this motherfucker attention? Well, the only reason you do it is not to push against his lies, against his propaganda, against his bullshit, against his narrative. It's to increase your own popularity. That's why you do it. Because you could do the very same thing, going over his positions and debunking them. You'll probably reach more people like that. You won't reach his audience, probably, not the majority of it, like you would now. But it's not like his audience was, at this point, was going to have their minds changed because of what you, Chris Kunzler, had to say. So what he is telling you in this moment is that currently, he's claiming to oppose the Nakba, the colonization of Palestine. But if the Zionist entity, the Zionist project, is successful in their goals and exterminating enough of the indigenous population, the Palestinians, if they're successful in displacing enough of them, and guaranteeing that they do not have the right to return. That Chris Kunzler will say to himself and publicly, like he has here, well, the Palestinians are stuck in their position. What did he say? What were the exact words that he said?
And a right to dignity can exist there. The alternative society that it posed. The different context with Israel is that it still has an open frontier engaged in direct settlement of Palestinian land that can be stopped. The entire state can be reimagined as a state towards Jewish people worldwide.
We actually do that with quite a few countries. Like, no one's trying to destroy America, or anyone who is a LARPer who should.
But there's a
seriously.
fundamental difference between America, right? Which is that America managed to eliminate the vast majority of its indigenous population and the alternative society that it posed. The different context with Israel is that it still has an open frontier engaged in direct settlement of Palestinian land that can be stopped. The entire state can be reimagined as a state in which all human beings have, on the basis of just a right to exist and a right to dignity, can exist there. That's the fundamental difference with America. The natives are not gone. They're not fully dead. But largely their position is cemented, and there are just not enough of them because they genocided enough of them.
So, the Zionist entity, and who knows what this number is for Chris Kunzler, manages to displace and genocide enough indigenous Palestinians, Chris Kunzler will eventually come out and say, hey, the Palestinian people, their position is cemented. Yes, tú. And he'll move on to whatever will make him popular, whatever will make him money, whatever will give him legitimacy online. That's what he's saying. And this is why, like, when I've called this out before, because I've seen it time and time again. If you're claiming to oppose 1948, and you're out here normalizing 1776. What you're telling me is that it's just a matter of time with you. That there is a date, there's a month, a year, and a day that you will abandon the Palestinian people. That there is a number of dead indigenous people, of massacred, exterminated indigenous people that will lead you to abandon Palestinian cause, like you're refusing to stand with the indigenous people here within the belly of the beast. That their position is cemented. What gives you the fucking right to determine an indigenous people's position, their future, their state of being, to say that they perpetually are cemented as colonized, that they have no hope for liberation, for their lands, to reacquire their lands, to liberate their lands. And so it's this settler realism. There's a fucking expiration date on their allyship. This is why I say don't trust these fucking people. The fact that he's doing this debate, second time by the way, with LonerBox should tell you enough. That should tell you everything about him. But I'm fucking glad that they got to this. I'm fucking glad that they got to this. Because sometimes you feel fucking paranoid. Sometimes you feel that you're being hypercritical. Sometimes you feel like you're not being a good comrade, a good ally. You're not being a good team player. And you let them fucking speak for long enough. And you see that everything about them is for their own fucking benefit. It's all transactional. It's all transactional. It clearly is, right? Chris Kunzler cannot financially, or his social status cannot benefit from supporting land back here in the belly of the beast, in Turtle Island, generally speaking. That wouldn't garner him the support that he's having now, profiting off, benefiting off the genocide of Palestinians. It wouldn't work that way. So for him, it's not worth the effort. Ah, their position cemented. Oh, but don't worry, I'm trying to prevent that for Palestinians. But once I feel, because until he provides us a date, until he provides us a number, it's all feelings. It's all feelings. Because he feels that the position of the indigenous people here has been cemented. So that's why I'm asking, Chris Kunzler, you're used to debating all these fucking liberal Zionists, you're used to debating all these right-wingers, that's cool. I only ask you one question. I'm not trying to debate you. I don't do this fucking, I do a different kind of fucking circus show. All right? I'm not beyond performing, but I have a little shame, just a tiny bit. I have a little self-respect, just a tiny bit, not a lot, but it exists, it's there. I have some dignity. Not much, but it's there. I like to look at myself in the mirror and not be ashamed too quickly. Although the shame is everlasting, the guilt is forever. I'm a good Catholic kid, after all. So I simply ask you this question. I'm not trying to debate you, man. That's not how I'm trying to make my bread. What is the time? What is the date? What is the number? Until in your mind, Palestinian people position has been cemented the way that you claim that the position of indigenous people here on Turtle Island, generally speaking, has been cemented. I don't think that's a difficult question to ask somebody who has this position, who's loudly and boldly claiming this position. So I look forward to, if you're already in that community, otherwise don't engage, otherwise do not engage. But if you're already in that community, let him know that I don't have a giant platform. I'm not trying to debate him. I might scare him a little bit. But please let him know. Just want a time, date, a number. That's it. So that when he switches up and abandons the Palestinian cause, his allyship to Palestinian people, at least we're not surprised when it occurs. Did the mic cut out? I don't know. Claudia is all good, all good. All right, let's wrap this section up right here.
Effectively.
That's why I'm trying. That's why I'm trying to. I mean, you can say the same with Turkey or Australia. Like, that's why I'm trying to get an answer from you, not a negative. I'm trying to get a positive answer.
I'm trying to see where this lines up over here. We'll get to it. I believe in the hour mark. Is the audio still good? Mic check. Ha 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 ha. All right, for sure. Just got to refresh the stream. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Do me a favor, y'all. Hit the like button if you haven't already. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. What are you doing here if you haven't subscribed? Sounds a little racist to me. No, and hit the notification bell if you want to know when I go live. It's Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. The Patreon is turned on if you want to help support the channel. $2 gets you to the Discord. Yesterday, we were celebrating the downfall of Autumn Leaves, the Majority Report, and the Vanguard's mod. And I repeat, and I mean it with my whole heart, I hope that's all they had in life. I hope that's all they had in life. Damn, that's a horrid angle, but fuck it. Let's get to it. Let's get to it. I will take a quick bathroom break over here. Maybe grab some green grapes. But in the meantime, before I come back, we don't steal people's content over here. We don't do that Hassan Denim shit. All right. We go back. Democratic state where we pull out the cringy angles. We do the thing. I appreciate y'all. Be right back. Be right back. Wolf, the Republicans, the conservatives. Let's carry on because I want to stick to this international, question. I want to stick to the Palestinian struggle. I want to stick to the vile, just evil normalization of colonization that liberals participate in. Liberal Zionists, as Mariam Williamson is undoubtedly. Anybody that denies that, anybody does not label her as such when speaking to her, is disingenuous, is a Zionist apologist, does not give a damn about Palestinians. If you're going to hit me with, well, she's a lesser of evil, with Biden, who's also very much a lover of Israel, be upfront about it. Be upfront about why she is still evil. All right? So call her a Zionist in her face. Label her as such when introducing her. The same way that you would a South African who supported apartheid. Because this being a Zionist is active, right? It's an active process. Apologizing, sanitizing Zionism is promoting the eradication of Palestinians in their homeland. There's no way around it. All right, let's carry on.
So, what are your boundaries as it pertains to Israel? Like, do you consider Israel to be an apartheid state, or is that a bridge too far? Do you think that criticisms of Israel from the likes of Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar are wrong or inconsistent? Because this is something that the Democratic Party again has claimed. They instead of addressing massacres happening in Jenin or anything of that nature, will turn around and seek to punish their own members in their own caucus, people that have, familial relationships of the oppressed people, and yeah.
All right. Again, I'll be critical. I'll be a hater. Can you be concise? I don't know if this is just kind of a character, an act that he does, like, I'm a little awkward, right? Like, bro, you were groomed for this type of, occupation by your uncle. You were groomed to be able to articulate yourself when interviewing, when questioning, when pushing back on political figures, but people in positions of power. You were groomed to do this by your uncle, right? And this is the issue with Nepo babies. Like, you would assume that you wouldn't be so incompetent, that it wouldn't be so embarrassing. Just ask a concise question. Why are you rambling? Like, even Marianne's like, wow, like, get to the point. How are you going to hold somebody's feet to the fire if you're running around the campground just to get to the fire, to your point, to your pushback? But he's like tiptoeing around it. Spit it out, man. Like, just, she's a Zionist. What do you, like, just ask her. And this is the thing. The reason why these like rambling on setups for questions or a rambling question is so annoying is because like just me going off, I gotta rewind it because I'm like, I forgot what he actually asked. What did he ask? Right? Like, just let's go back, let's hear it. I'll try not to get upset. Just be direct. Just be direct, Use your time wisely with these individuals. All right.
Or to stand for them, and as we should stand for them with any ally.
So, what are your boundaries as it pertains to Israel? Like, do you consider Israel to be an apartheid state, or is that a bridge too far? Do you think that criticisms of Israel from the likes of Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar are wrong or inconsistent, because this is something that the Democratic Party again has claimed. They instead of addressing massacres happening in Jenin or anything of that nature, will turn around and seek to punish their own members in their own caucus, people that have familial relationships of the
I
oppressed
understand all
people.
this.
And
I
yeah.
I think that there are laws, there are certain laws and certain rules in Israel which could legitimately be called apartheid laws.
Okay. All right. Enough with the throwback. Enough with the throwback. I don't know who was around then and still sticking around now, but I appreciate it. All the support. Financially, it ain't not much has changed, but I try to make sure to invest in a little bit of the setup to at least make it more visually appealing. All right. But yeah, you see how easy it is? You see how easy it is to say, yeah, it's apartheid. Yeah, they're committing a genocide. The liberal Zionists will always adapt. The liberal Zionists will always adapt. Shouldn't be having these, but yeah, okay. All right, let's get back to it. I believe I want to start I think there's a point that I really enjoyed at like the 1 hour mark. Let me make sure I'm at the right video here. There's one at 309, and I don't think we have to go that far yet. 312. Oh no, I think we will. I think we will jump that far ahead. Let's jump to 3.
Under 30% of the people killed there were militants. But that's
military personnel on these boats.
LonerBox, I feel like talking about civilians is crazy work when you went to Israel and you met like Yishai
When have I ever supported someone targeting civilians? You think I support the targeting of
your
civilians?
work on the Great March of Return? Like, I've never seen something more crazy than that. Like, that was unbelievable.
So this is why, again, like, what the fuck is the point of this? What are you trying to achieve here? Where you acknowledge that LonerBox went on a Zionist tour in the Zionist entity, when you acknowledge that LonerBox has been trying to vilify the Great March of Return, what do you think you're going to accomplish here, Chris? Christopher, what do you think you're going to accomplish here? What is the goal and purpose of this? Is it to have a conversation, to be friendly, to just talk openly about disagreements, is to expose them? What more does LonerBox have to do for you to be embarrassed and ashamed of yourself to be in the same fucking video as him? To no longer be cordial and friendly to him? What more does he have to do? Does this motherfucker have to himself join the fucking IOF? Or would that actually encourage you more, Chris, to help him, to rescue him? Damn it, bro. And here they were talking briefly about Ansarullah, the Houthis, and their, targeting of so-called Zionist ships. Here's my thing. If they want to institute a fucking blockade around the Red Sea, and that is their way to try and bring a stop to genocide of Palestinians, what the fuck are we doing? Why am I going to oppose that?
Where you basically
that there no. Where
you went to relitigate the Great March of Return, right? Like you went to basically explain, okay, no, Palestinians, there was X amount of them shot. there was like X amount who I have calculated are actually Hamas militants. You did that for the
How
exclusive...
did I calculate that? Wait, how did I calculate that?
Hold on. You did that for... I don't care how you calculate it. That's not the point I'm trying to make. The point
Well,
is that you went to
because if some of them
No, it
were,
doesn't.
then some of them were.
LonerBox. It doesn't matter. The point is you sought to relitigate the Great March of Return to say that actually about 30% or just under 30% of the people killed there were militants. But that's not what you were actually trying to do. You have an audience built up that there's a sizable amount of Israelis, a lot of right-wingers, a lot of people who just fucking hate Hassan Piker. Like, that's the basis of your audience, sadly.
Now, hold up. We fucking hate Hassan Piker over here because we recognize that he's a counterinsurgent propagandist, Chris. Chris, buddy pal. My enemy's enemy is not my friend. All right?
But what you wanted to appease them with...
As opposed to what? Hamas and Hezbollah simps?
What
like,
you wanted
what
you wanted to appease them with, and what you wanted to get at them is like, look, the UN is untrustworthy. Anyone serious would look at the Great March of Return and would say, hey, the idea of this was to do non-violent resistance. Israel responded instantaneously with killing. Avigdor Lieberman said there will be no investigation of what we've done. No one did anything wrong instantaneously. You then go on to say, well, they attacked the border wall. They set fire to a sniper something that they didn't even have a soldier in. And you intentionally ignore the fact that, like, if you bother to read like wider literature on the Great March of Return, they talk about, and I'm not just talking about there's an article by Craig Jones which talks about this, how there was a specific noticing of people being shot in specific body parts. You know that story about the knee. Israel has this logic that it has a right to cripple, to disable people for the rest of their life because it's not killing. And you chose, in a situation where there were 30,000 wounded, I believe about 7,000 shot with live ammunition, to create an allegedly beautiful research, something you'll probably have some fucking pride in, to basically say, well, it was actually all a Hamas thing, the UN lies to you, and blah, blah, blah. When if you look at the overarching effect on a society that is largely vertically built, that does not have the healthcare capacity because of the blockade, because of the size of it, because of the way in which Israel limits people leaving the Gaza Strip, to even have the ability to deal with the amount of wounded people, you choose to make a video about how actually there was a small amount more Hamas militants there. Like, I kind of want you to reflect and have a feeling about that. Like, that you
can tell me to reflect when you are...
This was pleading to him. Please, have feelings, have a conscience, please. Have you no humanity, man? Have you no humanity? Bro, this makes you look fucking pathetic. This makes you look fucking pathetic, man. God, fuck, bro. Unbearable. And he's just doing this as a performance piece. He's just doing it so people be like, no, Chris, he's reasonable. He'll try to talk to people that he disagrees with. And he'll try to like, hey, no. Go back. Bed. You give a dog a cookie. You give a dog a cookie. Bed. That's all it was, just one. He's like, you're cheap. No grapes though, but a cookie you got half a cookie. He feels robbed. That cookie was promised to him 6,000 years ago. He's doing this. Chris is doing this just so people could be like, oh no, Chris will try to talk to people. He's reasonable. He'll try to reason with you. He won't get overly emotional. Yeah, because he doesn't give a fuck. He'll plead to your humanity. What are you doing, bro? This is a fucking pathetic ass game here.
You can tell me to reflect when you accurately characterize the things I say, because if you had watched what I said on the Great March of Return and looked at my notes that I took on it, you will also notice that I pointed out that there were quite a lot of people there, especially with the injuries of people who didn't deserve to be shot and the fact that there was no investigation. You will probably know that I spoke about the fact that in the IDF, over Israel's entire history, have gone perhaps like, I think the longest sentence they've ever given to someone who has ever like murdered a Palestinian was something like 18 months in jail. Or maybe there was a longer sentence, but the longest they spent was 18 months. Or you would have noticed that I mentioned how the IDF actually lied openly about Nijar, that person who called herself a medic who was killed because they clip-chimped one of her interview statements and said that she was calling herself a human shield. So just because I don't because I hold people to, I guess, like similar standards, and how if I see someone like Finkelstein lying about the fact that he said that the first day of that march was all civilian, and then I go and find out that Hamas are claiming a third of the people who died, and you've got Sinwar in a tent telling these people that we're going to go and march through the wall and like rip their fucking hearts out, then I think that's worth acknowledging. If people want to frame it as it was a completely peaceful protest and they just fired at people random, like that's not what happened. So I'm correcting the issue on both ends. That's why people who are right-wing Israelis or Israelis who like support, like love the IDF or whatever, don't like me. You just don't see that part because it's not really in your purview. But in any case,
I mean,
none of this gets away from the fact that you're...
Hold on, because at the end there, this whole like, I'm just calling balls and strikes. I'm just being impartial. But missing the fundamental issue that regardless if they came peaceful or violent, the only reason that the necessity to do that is because they're being colonized. So for me, everything they do is legitimate, and everything that the colonizer do is, whatever they do is illegitimate. I'm just calling balls and strikes though. Fuck out of here. He mentions another point right here about
like support, like love the IDF or whatever, don't...
Oh, Sam Cedar does this too. I've never called myself an anti-Zionist per se. I've never really called myself a Zionist either. Well, you know, some people will call me a Zionist, but some hardcore Zionists will call me an anti-Zionist. Chingate way. What are you? I don't give a fuck if these rabid fucking foaming at the mouth Zionists don't like you because you're not an extremist enough. Their fucking hatred for you does not validate you to me in any fucking shape or form. Said earlier to Chrissy, my enemy's enemies they're not my friends. Same fucking goes to LonerBox.
Like me. You just don't see that part because it's not really in your purview. But in any case,
I mean,
none of this gets away from the fact that you're supporting the targeting of civilians in the Red Sea.
but like, LonerBox, let's be frank here.
Do you or do you not? Do you not support targeting
The
civilians in
reason
the Red
that
Sea?
I support the notion of it is targeting Israeli ships. If other ships get hit in the process, that's not great. But if it's Israeli ships that are getting hit, that is a good and a just and a moral thing.
I don't think collateral damage is like you just hit a ship that has nothing to do with Israel and it's still civilians on it.
What do you?
It's like quite far. That's not what you think is
But, like-
collateral damage, that they just get the wrong ship.
What do you mean?
What?
That it's collateral damage that they get the wrong ship. What is the percentage of ships that are hit? Like, I'd like to hear this.
Wait, no, we're not getting away from the fact that you acknowledge that you are supporting the targeting of civilians.
Well, like, LonerBox.
I've never done that, by the way.
LonerBox, come on, mate. Like, at a certain point, you've got to realize
It's
that
a simple
you
yes
have...
or no question. I
What do
don't
you
know
mean?
what to
Do
tell
I
you.
Come on, LonerBox. Come on, man. Come on. What backroom deal did you fools have that you're like, come on, bro? Come on. You're being a little rough.
support I'm telling you objectively what I support, which I support is preventing shipping to Israel. I think that that's a good thing.
That's not what they were doing, though. They were hitting anyone.
What is the number of like non-Israel linked ships that are hit? Like, how many is it? Is it a sizable amount? Because I didn't seem to see all that much reporting that it actually was this sizable amount.
Depends on what your Israel-linked ship is, because I think one of the Israel ships that they had claimed was because, first of all, it was heading, I think, from either Europe or North Africa, somewhere on the Mediterranean, to India. And I think it was owned by a company that's owned by a company that has an Israeli...
We're going to skip forward a little bit because I don't care about this. It should have just been a fucking blockade. It should have been a fucking blockade. Especially with all the normalizers, other countries benefiting from Zionist expansion and extermination of Palestinians. It should have just been an entire blockade. We're going to stop fucking global trade in this region until the world comes together to stop the genocide of Palestinians. Instead of giving people like this a fucking excuse, some wiggle room to oppose any and all actions to bring an end to genocide.
shocked by from the Houthis targeting a civilian ship. Like, I'm sorry, man. In the context of
I'm not telling you to be shocked or horrified
well, in
out of
the
the
context-
context.
yeah,
I'm telling you
yeah.
I'm asking you about supporting it,
about supporting
cheering
what?
it.
About supporting a blockade and them. Yes, yes.
Well,
I think that is a good
the
thing.
blockade that entails targeting civilians.
I
often
think
when
that
they
is
don't
a
have
good
anything
thing.
to
But
do with
don't they give the ships a ring before they target them?
Who gives a fuck if they're... Oh, fucking God.
It's probably fine. The other one, not so much. The kibbutzim out.
Oh, yeah.
When it comes to Palestinians doing
Yeah.
have served in the Israeli military, not as big a part as like say.
I don't know. Like, it's
But I
just
think
like,
that. Well, I think. But in the context of Palestine, is were any Palestinians to do that, you
Hold on, right here.
it's killed in like an ANC style.
Perfect.
Palestinians
ANC.
can do that. Not
We're
of children who
we're towards the end of what I'll be covering.
dare to oppose us in any capacity. To arrest them. Palestinians aren't allowed to do that, LonerBox. The Great March of Return will fucking shoot them. Like Israel will protest and like ships across it that are
Why
needed
did I
to
say
protect
resistance
Israel.
should all just end? Didn't I tell
Right
you?
here.
Brutal, bloody dictatorships across it that are
Why
needed
did I
to
say
protect
resistance
Israel.
should all just end? Didn't I tell you what kind of resistance that I support in the West Bank? I didn't say all
You
resistance
said
should
that you
end.
support. You said that you supported like what protest and like going to settlements through blocking
No,
roads,
what-
blocking roads, and right?
Like ANC actions that can also.
Yeah, but they're
entail
not allowed to.
killing settlers. I don't
LonerBox,
give a
they're
fuck
not
about
allowed to
them.
do that because Israel will fucking shoot them. Like Israel will shoot them, or if Israel don't shoot them, they'll get their lackeys in the Palestinian Authority to arrest them. Palestinians aren't allowed to do that, LonerBox. The Great March of Return, like that's why it's so crazy that you offered any litigation and you didn't bring that up to your audience and being like, this thing is so fucked that when people engage in predominantly non-violent resistance, as in the first Intifada, Israel's initial instantaneous responses, ooh, time for mass torture and bone breaking of children who dare to oppose us in any capacity. Ooh, you're boycotting us. You're engaged in civil disobedience. We are going to torture the fuck out of you. Like that's the thing. You like act in this world of like simultaneously where Palestinians can do that non-violent resistance, but then also litigate the Great March of Return. Like, I don't know, bro.
I don't know how I would say that what I was supporting was non-violence. You realize that attacking settlements and attacking settlers would be violent,
with
right?
weaponry?
Like, that's violent resistance. Yeah.
So you think that that's okay?
Do you think I care if a settler gets killed in like an ANC style like attack on the settlement? Like say if there's like an outpost trying to be set up and the Palestinians say, no, you can't be here. We'll shoot you if you keep building this, and then they just stay. You think I wouldn't support that? What?
Yes.
Bro. If that were to happen, the only reason he's able to say, oh, I would totally support that. 2, hasn't happened. Hasn't happened. That's why. And the way that he frames it is only the bad settlers. Only the really, really bad settlers. Because even Ethan Klein, Hassan Piker's former business partner, will say, oh yeah, it's the settlers, it's the settlers. Homie, you're all fucking settlers.
I really did not think that you would be willing to support that, but I think that the problem is that
Yeah,
like,
because you don't know your enemy. I don't know. Like, it's
But I
just
think
like,
that, I think, but in the context of Palestine, is were any Palestinians to do that, you wouldn't support it, right? Like, surely on October the 7th, you must realize that some of the settlements in the Gaza envelope are like part of surveilling the Gaza Strip. Like, they can see into fucking Gaza. I know it's not as big a part as like, say, having, you know, military outposts and stuff there, but I think that it's undeniable that, like, on October the 7th, Israeli civilians live across from Gaza, that they have humiliated people in Gaza as they have over and over again been killed, that the vast majority of these people have served in the Israeli military. And, like, in the context of, say, somewhere like Lebanon, people are fine with, like, huge amounts of people being blown up in civilian clothing whilst they're not actually engaged in militancy directly. And that when it comes to Palestine, it's like, well, you know, or when it comes to Palestinians doing it, it's like they are the most evil, barbarous savages that our world has ever seen.
You'll forgive me if I don't actually think that the kibbutzim outside Gaza were the same as settlers trying to set up outposts in the West Bank.
Oh, you'll forgive me. You'll forgive me. Fuck out of here, bro. The kibbutz were literally the start of the settler colonial project on the ground. Without kibbutz, you don't have the Zionist project.
Yeah, I think targeting one is probably fine. The other one, not so much.
What's
Again,
the material difference?
The material difference is that, well, I thought we were talking about law earlier. The difference is that one of them are citizens of Israel. The others are illegal settlers.
But they're still citizens of Israel protected by the Israeli military to engage in the violence against Palestinians. Like, you know this. You met the Israeli military. They were just out there protecting... They were out there protecting... protecting
the
settlers.
the kibbutzim are not there to protect settlers. What the kibbutzim are there to, well, most of them.
Well, first of all, I said the IOF, the military. But the kibbutz are totally there to defend settlers. Because they get caught up in the crosshairs of it all.
Were there because they were, depending on which one, some of them were like built by Moroccan refugees, others are, but generally speaking,
So
the
they're
kibbutzim were inhabited by left-leaning people who wanted statehood for Palestinians.
Yeah, I mean, not in every place though. That's not true, is it? Like,
Wait, which?
Again, let me just wrap this up right here, and you'll see why it's pointless having this debate with these people. Because like, wait, which one? Which one? Be specific.
Sderot.
You were the one. Wait, Sderot is not a kibbutz. It's a town.
Okay, it's a town in the nearby vicinity.
The kibbutzim were the ones that were close,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
were
yeah,
right
but
in the envelope.
I think also
Those were mostly left-wing people.
I think also,
people who
like,
supported the Palestinian state.
I think
Those were also the ones who. Anyway.
I think also, like, it's interesting that you think, like, you know, in the context of Holocaust survivors in.
Oh, then, Jesus, bro. I do want to show this though. Let's see here. Oh, just in case. Because this position by LonerBox is the very same one as the Vanguard. Same fucking position. There we go.
What I was trying to give her the benefit of the doubt was, though, is that the idea originally, behind the founding of Israel, was like more of the idea of like a kibbutz in Jerusalem, right? And for people who don't know what kibbutz are, it was like voluntary, like almost like anarchism, right? That's one of the reasons that Noam Chomsky describes himself as, or not one of the reasons, right? But that's the tradition that he's like borrowing from when he espouses his anarcho-syndicalist principles, because it's like a Hebrew cultural custom where people live it basically like a co-op, like a it was founded in the beginning of the 20th century as by young Zionists who wanted to live in Jerusalem, and that was going to be an effort for them to live harmoniously in their holy land, and not
harmoniously in their holy land,
an effort to subjugate or remove anyone else, because with
not an effort to subjugate or remove anyone else. Kibbutz.
By young Zionists who wanted to live in Jerusalem, and that was going to be an effort for them to live harmoniously in their holy land, and not an effort to subjugate or remove anyone else, because with all Abrahamic religions view Jerusalem as their holy land, right? So I don't think that you could fault that concept, that idea. What became a problem was when it became an actual, vessel state, after World War II, when the United States started giving it massive amounts of funding, when all of that happened, because the act of the Zionist movement predates that, entire moment in history, which is why I was just trying to give her the benefit of the doubt. As a Jewish woman, she was, I could see her trying to like make the case for that and say like, no, it actually had a pure spiritual beginning that was then co-opted by the actual political and governmental state. One of the beginning first.
So I put the kibbutz were the first steps into ethnic cleansing.
Practiced, groups of anarchism, right? It's the early kibbutz. We're talking like 1900s, 1910s, 1920s, 1930s, all the way up until, right? So obviously the Holocaust didn't begin until later, but the Zionist idea had, started to begin because anti-Semitism was still like fucking burnt throughout all of Europe at the time. So while those groups that did come, they became, the groups that settled and founded Israel, and that did lead to the ethnic cleansing. I think it's just a little bit too black and white there. Like, was trying to play a little bit of.
It's too black and white to call people colonizers and colonized. Too black and white. It's just racist reductionism.
Devil's advocate at the beginning to provide some more historical context that people don't get all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say that some of the people that founded Israel, or some of the people that supported the original idea of Israel, had good intentions for sure. I think that's like definitely something that's fair to say. Now, whether or not the execution of the idea was in line with those values.
Oh, it absolutely was not. Yeah.
Palestine, they basically had the right to participate in a settler colonial entity that dispossessed and denied the Palestinians any dignity, but Palestinians who participated in militant resistance against the state that had continually humiliated them and denied them their basic rights and kept them under the yoke of Western imperialism, that they had no right to rise up and break out. I don't think mass civilian killing is good or a thing like that, but I think that Israel is a very different situation in that these settlers have engaged in militancy their entire lives against Palestinians and humiliate them.
Well, the kibbutzim residents were not settlers, though. They weren't. They didn't do those things you're just describing. They're people who were. Most of them were born there. Like, but what?
What's wrong with what a settler does in the West Bank?
They're claiming land that is not internationally recognized as theirs. And they're
Okay.
also in a situation where they have to use the pretext of a military occupation to set up there, whereas the settlers in Israel are just there in their country. That's
It was always
the,
premised
all
on
the
it.
kibbutzim dwellers.
It was always premised on the dispossession of the Palestinians.
outside
though.
of my
Like,
race.
Yeah, but by
every-
the same
each
token,
person
that I
is-
don't support Native Americans murdering random American citizens just in the name of land back, the same reason I wouldn't support going after people who are citizens of Israel, especially given that most of these people were born there. They weren't the ones who did the...
Again, mind you, it wasn't random. But they pushed this narrative of, oh yeah, these savages just randomly want bloodshed. October 7th Operation Alaska Flood was a military operation. It was not random. But again, the mindless savage just wants violence.
Of 1948, who did the Nakba? That's not
No,
them.
but to this day, Israel still dispossesses and harms Palestinians every single day.
Chris Kunzler. Nope. But to this very day, the Zionist entity what? Dispossesses Palestinians.
Given that most of these people were born there, they weren't the ones who did the 1948, who did the Nakba. That's not
No,
them.
but to this day, Israel still dispossesses and harms Palestinians every single day.
To this day, the U.S. settler colonial empire dispossesses and harms the indigenous people. To this day. But again, according to Chris Kunzler, their position is cemented. So he can't support them. How am I to believe that he's genuinely in support of Palestinian liberation or the decolonization of Palestine when he's willing to normalize the current colonization and atrocities committed to indigenous people in the belly of the beast? How?
What do you... Most of these people were born there.
One more
They
time.
weren't the ones who did the 1948, who did the Nakba. That's not
No,
them.
but to this day, Israel still dispossesses and harms Palestinians every single day.
What are you trying to tell me? You don't support killing civilians
I
in
don't
Israel.
think
Are you,
I don't
are you
think killing
putting your
civilians is a
position,
good
or-
thing, but I think that like ultimately drawing this distinction of like, oh, settlers in the West Bank are so evil that they're the ones who are doing this evil thing when they're just supported entirely by the Israeli state is kind of hard to me. That these settlers do live on the outside of Palestinian territories, lands that belong to Palestinians, and that Palestinians want those lands back. And I can't sit here and think like, you know, that Palestinians are the most evil, savage monsters to have ever existed in the world, and that Israel has some right or just moral position.
I don't know why you keep on invoking this like evil, savage monsters. I typically
Because-
don't describe people in this way. Like, if you wanted to understand why Hamas does what they do, but what are we even talking about now? We're talking about targeting the civilians. You seem to be okay with doing it in the sea if the ship might be Israeli. You know,
Yeah,
flip
yeah,
a coin. It doesn't
I'm
matter.
definitely okay with that. I'm
as far
definitely okay
as-
with that.
Yeah, and as far
It sounds sarcastic, but like he said he was.
as it goes with Israeli civilians in the kibbutzim, I don't think you support targeting them, and you're okay
No,
with
I don't
settlers. So
support
not
targeting
much of a
civilians.
disagreement there.
No.
Okay, so I don't know what argument we're trying to make. What, like, because their country was founded on ethical grounds, that means that we can be more understanding of the civilians of today getting killed there? I mean, we wouldn't put this standard to any other country.
I think that we can be more understanding of what the Palestinians do and why the situation, like why October the 7th happened, basically. I think that that's the like thing that we should be talking about, that like, especially in the context of like the world in which we've lived for the last 2 years. So many Palestinians have been slaughtered in part because the way in which they were all tarred as barbaric savages after October the 7th, that over and over again we heard that there was mass systematized rape, that there was huge amounts of killing, beheadings and all of these things, and that our media perpetuated that narrative, and that has been so incredibly dangerous in Palestine. And this taps into what I'm talking about with the Houthis and stuff, and why I find it so odd to kind of have this hyper-fixation or hyper-focus on, say, you know, Western leftist interest in the axis of resistance and stuff.
Well, because that's my area. The predominant narrative around Palestine in my country or in the English-speaking world, what I see on social media or what I see in the area.
Again, I don't know what the point is to be out here defending Western leftists when you're having this conversation, other than kiss ass to like Sam Piker and his orbiters, which is just fucking pathetic. Oh yeah, it's right here. Nothing. That is weird. Let me try. Let me see if it'll pop up in LonerBox's video, and then we'll wrap up here.
I don't think we should continually make excuses for dictatorial regimes because they fit with our geopolitical interests. Like, I think that is, like, when you sit here and you're like, well, we should just do X thing that we've been doing for years and does nothing.
To be clear, I don't say that. So to be clear, I don't think I've ever said that I think Western governments do enough when it comes to Israel. I don't know where that came from. I said it's a start. I think it's something that can be built on. But at the end of the day, these discussions don't really matter with either of us because we both want completely different things. You seem to think that Israel can just like unilaterally give itself up to becoming a binational state, or just get so pressured and weakened that, well, you know, maybe Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis in Iran will change their tune and not try to do a broad attack and take over the entire country by force and kill however many civilians they can. But I don't.
Hold on. Around the United States, Emirates is really important. Going on a fourth mass slaughter on both Biden and Trump. It's not that one. Excuse me. United States and the United Emirates, United Arab. Nope. United States relationship. No. Shit. Man, that's a bummer. There was this part about Alaska and Puerto Rico, but I guess I didn't pick it up. Yeah, it's not picking it up. Bummer. And then this is Asia, though.
With the United Arab Emirates.
Well, it's not just people in El Fasher, right? They're not all the people who were starving, right? There were people in Zanzam and all those surrounding camps.
Yeah. Of course, there are people.
Maybe, let's see, October 7th. No, unfortunately not. Unfortunately not there. Big bummer. And I definitely should have, did I? Save it, but I don't recall having it.
You'll forgive me if I don't actually think that they're claiming last.
314. Yeah, no, we went over that part. Well, look, I don't normally do this, but I thought it was funny to do it with Chris Kunzler over here. Again, if you pretend to oppose 1948, but normalize 1776, it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time before you abandon the Palestinian people as well. All right. With that being said, thank y'all for being here. We won't do this again for quite some time. Don't worry about it. But if you haven't already, hit the like button, hit the subscribe, hit the notification bell if you want to know when I go live. That's Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Friday. Go ahead and support the Patreon if you can to get access to the Discord. And we're gonna do starting next year. We're gonna do monthly a watch party with a documentary or a movie. We're gonna start the book club. It's gonna be a good time. We're gonna get that growing. Por mientras, ya estuvo.